for removing justices was a cover-up for
Parents, mark your calendars. It's the 3FM Baby Fair happening live on the 11th to the 13th of July at Marina Mall, Airport City in Accra. From 10 a.m. and it's absolutely free. From baby essentials and kids wear to toys, skincare, education material, and so much more. Shop amazing deals on a wide range of childcare products, all under one roof. Don't miss our sessions with the Ghana Pediatric Society and all the amazing mums with the Mum Circle, a safe space for young mothers to share tips and connect. And there will be fun activities for the kids with our Kids Corner, games for the family, good food, and great vibes all around. To be a vendor, please call 0531 100 927 or 0532 200 It's the 3FM Baby Fair, your one-stop event for all your childcare needs.
7, also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, and on DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com, and also live on the Voice of London radio in the heart of the city of London. There was a little technical hitch this morning that delayed our start by just a few minutes, and we're still working on it and get straight into the conversation this morning. The most important issue is that you are with us, and we will table all the matters that are of key concern to you, the Ghanaian people, this morning. And we will go straight to the point with a guest who will be joining me in a few minutes here on Key Point on TV3. We're also on 3FM 92.7. I am Alfred Ocansey. Now, government this week denied allegations of political persecution against the suspended Chief Justice Gertrude Saba Tokono. Now, the Minister in charge of Government Communication, Phyllis Kwatiofosu, in a press briefing, more of a rebuttal to that earlier press conference by the Chief Justice, insisted that the judicial process the embattled Chief Justice is being taken through follows constitutional requirements. Now, the minister noted that since the inception of the process, nobody has been able to ascribe any known verifiable constitutional breach. That's the point that she made. Known verifiable constitutional breach, adding that the president had kept fidelity to the Constitution. That's Phyllis Kwatiofosu's position on this matter. Now, this is contrary to the narrative of the embattled Chief Justice. You heard the details that she put out at the press conference earlier in the week. We will get into the aspects of the issues that she raised and then the responses that came thereof. So stay with us here on Key Point on TV3. Also, this week, one of the topical issues that came up with some 5 former officers of the Ghana Revenue Authority, including 2 former commissioner generals, amongst 8 persons currently under investigation by the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Now, following the arrest last Tuesday night, in fact, it was Tuesday night, in connection with allegations of fraudulent contract in the operations of the Strategic Mobilization Limited. I'm talking about SML. Now, a former Commissioner General or GRA, Reverend Dr. Amishadai Owusu-Amoah, an ex-commissioner of customs and current general manager of SML, Isaac Rental, and a former technical advisor at GRA and now managing director, chief executive officer of SML, Christian Tetesoti, were held in custody, and some of them have been granted bail of this institution. I'm talking about the OSP, after they were picked up in a simultaneous swoop. Now, what does all of this say, especially about what has been going on with SML? Is one of 5 issues that the former finance minister, Kenneth Nana-Ofori-Atta, is being wanted for. How do things play out in the coming days? That's a question that we'll get into this morning. Also, this morning here on Key Point on TV3, the New Patriotic Party is set to meet with all the presidential aspirants, and on the 3rd of July, who have publicly declared their intention because of a number of things that happened after the National Executive Committee of the party declared their intentions to conduct the flag bearership on the 31st of January 2026. We'll have a conversation this morning because some persons, senior persons within the party, have some thoughts to share with us. We'll be back shortly after this quick break. Stay with us here on Key Point. And also, we're live on 3FM 92.7 and on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and on DSTV channel 279 all across the world on 3news.com. And we're also live on the Voice of London radio in the heart of the city of London. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
Unfortunately, every step of the removal process being undertaken against me is being done in a manner that breaks every rule on how justice is delivered in our country. And this is why I find the need to draw the nation's attention to the serious violations of the Constitution and law in the process, and the danger it holds for the development of the nation's democracy. I applied for the proceedings of the committee set up by His Excellency the President to be held in public, so that in the interest of transparency and for the truth in the matters being raised to be made known to the people of Ghana. I did so because I knew that the secrecy of the proceedings for removing justices was not created in the Constitution as a cover-up for any agenda. The Constitution expects that only reasons for removing the Chief Justice and public officials as set out in Article 146 will be the reason for doing so. And especially, such reasons must affect public sensitive national interest or public order or safety. Okay. Persons who may not know me beyond my public duties, and many who think that since these proceedings seem to be carefully staged to result in my removal as Chief Justice, it would be best if I just retired or resigned rather than subject myself to an ill-motivated process. I have also received threats and veiled threats to the effect that if I fail to resign or retire voluntarily, I will be made to suffer some harm or the other. I've also heard commentaries in the media about how this process was born out of a stated political agenda to remove me and control the judiciary, and that it is a political effort that can only result in an outcome that was decided long before it started. If the nation is willing to accept these developments in its democratic journey, it must be understood that I sounded the warning and the nation took the decision to be passive about it. I cannot share the burden of those involved in designing and implementing this enterprise of pretending to use Article 146 proceedings to remove a Chief Justice through unknown and unlawful means, by keeping quiet about the violations of law and due process. Neither can I make anyone's burden lighter by resigning or retiring, instead of proving that not even one of these wild claims in a collection of petitions is even remotely true or meets the standard required for removing a judge. Resigning or retiring while Article 146 proceedings are being conducted to remove a judge is not an option any judge or public official can even have. There is a decided case on the matter by the Supreme Court. The suit number is J6/02/2019. Again, no one has the authority to walk away from proceedings started by the state. Judgment can be entered against you because you fail to defend yourself. And a judge who resigns or retires would still lose all entitlements that they have worked for because they failed to defend the claims and resigned or retired while the proceedings were still going on.
That's the suspended Chief Justice. Very clear in her words. Resignation or retiring is not even on the table. It's not an option, and she spelled out exactly why. And this is a matter that we'll sink our teeth into because it was topical within the week. It's unprecedented, right? It's never happened. I mean, as we've seen in the history in this country, with the Chief Justice going through this process, addressing the nation and essentially putting out her case, because she had already earlier contended that she wanted this matter to be public. She wanted the entire hearing of this petition to be public. The Supreme Court shut down that desire that she had, but she still wanted the public to know what is going on from her point of view, her perspective, her experience. How much good has this done to her case after getting to know what she sought to say this week? That's the question that we'll ask amongst many others this morning here on Key Point on TV3. We're live on 3FM 92.7, also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, and on DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. This is the second issue we'll deal with. I just wanted to set the tone for this morning. Remind you as well that we're live on the Voice of London radio in the heart of the city of London. Joining me in the studio, I will start the conversation on the Strategic Mobilization Limited SML arrest that we saw this week. The Special Prosecutor's Office has been busy this week on this matter, but I've been joined by lawyer John Kwame Kwesi. He's a constitutional lawyer and also he's been lecturing in many areas. Lawyer John Kwame Kwesi. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, my brother.
Thank you so much for making the time to be here. Also joining us is Martin Luther Pebu. He is a former member of the Operation Recover All Loot Preparatory Team and also a private legal practitioner who has contributed to improving the legal jurisprudence that we have in this country with the help of the Supreme Court, as he always reminds me, that the judges had to consider the case that he brought for him to even have contributed the way he has done. But we still give him his flowers. Lawyer Martin Pebu, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Morning, Mr. Ocansey. It's good to be here. Ghana's undisputed, unchallenged, incontrovertible #1 show.
Thank you very much.
Yes, good. So I think right away, I'll go on to do the rituals. Today, I want to start with the conflict in Nkwanta area. Yesterday, yes, it's sad. We appeal to the, let me call it the factions. I don't want to say what factions. Factions to let peace prevail. Yes, yesterday, a young student suffered a stray bullet, died. Yes, you see. So
they closed down a school as a result of that.
Exactly. So please, it's one nation, one people. So once there's conflict in one part of the nation, it affects all of us. So the people of Nkwanta and all the various factions, please, let peace prevail. There isn't anything that cannot be talked over, right? Yes. So let's rather choose dialogue than war. Okay. Thank you.
And in adding to his also, I think I will also add my voice to the ongoing road construction, the various road construction, particularly the two main roads, the one leading from Accra to somewhere Winneba, and then also from Accra to Nsawam lanes.
Yeah.
I've used both lanes this week, and I think the authorities should do something about it. It's good they are helping, and it's good it will all come to our good. But then, in the meantime, I think they should try and give some leeways so that users can also make use of. Yesterday, for instance, coming from Nsawam to Accra, the whole place was choked. The whole place is flooded. So how do we expect vehicles, you see, to pass through and then for their normal activities? So at least, occasionally, maybe every 2 hours, authorities can go to site and find out what is happening, and then try to see if they can guide and assist users of the various.
It's an important point, indeed. Okay. That in some road is a concern. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Ocansey, so let me finish up. Yeah. So as usual, more support for the Nkokon Kitinkiti program that the government is rolling out. That's Feed Ghana. Feed Ghana. If you don't like Feed Ghana, you can call it Operation Feed Yourself, right? Or there's planting for food and jobs, whichever name you call it. But the basic principle is that we must all wake up as Ghanaians and join in the fight. It's embarrassing that with all our accolades when it comes to the democratic experiment, we still are food insecure. Yeah. Food insecurity is not anything that we can be proud of at all.
Indeed.
So let's join in. I've seen a program by Stanbic Bank. They're trying to help bridge, etc. So please, let more of the banks help. And the rich and wealthy in our society, so that we can get more of our young people to join in agriculture. I've been saying that when the president won the elections, a few days after, they brought a video of him on his farm. Yes, I think every time he goes there, his handlers should put out a fresh video. It will motivate young people to see that even the president farms, right?
Indeed.
Then the other ministers, I think I've mentioned Mintakando, the rice farmer, and then other MPs, Kofi Adams, even the president secretary, Kalistus Mama. Mama also farms a lot, right? So let's have more programs showing these big people in our society on their farms, and then perhaps it will ginger more of our youth to go in, because this food insecurity there it's intolerable. I mean, it has no space in Ghana. It has no space in Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana. It's like we don't have our heads properly screwed on, right? Everybody, every corner, people are preaching. I'm like, what are you preaching? People are hungry, and pastors, after one house, the next house is a church. And what are you doing? Church? When people are hungry? Oh, come on. So I see
it's a very important point. Just to complement that point, that I saw a World Bank data about the farmers population, and then also the age of farmers in this country. We are aging in terms of the farming population.
Thank you.
Majority of the farmers being between the ages of 50 and 70, it cannot be the case. So it's a good point about encouraging young people to get in there with the right support.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And the structures, mechanisms in place. Good point. Yes, please, let's conclude.
And finally,
to the next issue.
Yasantua, so for Ekufu, more fire. Yasantua, President Kufuor's relation, who never thought that because they are relations, she should keep quiet. When Kufuor misgoverned, I mean, Yasantua spoke up. You can mention the DDEP, the Kufuor's program that impoverished Ghanaians, took away our savings, daylight robbery, right? And the other areas of misgovernance, the lithium contract, etc. Yasantua spoke up. So please, all those of you who have relations in government, it doesn't mean that keep quiet. No, that's not what it means. If government is getting it wrong, speak up. Don't think that, it's my family, so let me keep quiet. That is what has left us where we are now, because a lot of people are complicit. We are enablers. Because the big man is your father, is your uncle, and because of what he brings home, then you choose to look elsewhere. No. Kwame Nkrumah's time, people were trained to report their parents, the young pioneers, etc. Right? Yes, so let's look into our history. This is not the first time. So let's stop being enablers. Let's stop being enablers. The fact that somebody is your relation and is in government doesn't mean that you can't speak up. See something, say something, sorted. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And this week, we saw a lot in terms of the special prosecutor's work in this SML matter. In fact, for the past couple of weeks, we've seen some movement in that area. And I start off this conversation with an article that I saw authored by Jimmy Agla. Good morning, Mr. Agla. It says, public office in Ghana is like a mango tree in your neighbor's house. You didn't plant it. You didn't water it. But when the fruit ripens, your only job is to climb, pluck, and share the spoils, preferably before the neighbor notices the tree was ever theirs. In this beloved Republic of Ghana, corruption no longer hides under desks or behind curtains. It wears a three-piece suit, holds a press conference, waves politely, and proceeds to collect its shares before the meeting even starts. We have turned corruption into an art form, off-key, yet performed with such national confidence that even the audience forgets they are being robbed mid-performance. Public office in Ghana, indeed, we condemn corruption passionately. We mount platforms, we quote scriptures, we shake our heads so hard you will think integrity is suffering an earthquake. But behind the scenes, envelopes slide skillfully under tables. When we started this conversation on this particular press conferences by the special prosecutor, questions were raised as to what's the end game? What is he going to do beyond telling us what has happened? If you recall, the last time he spoke about SML and the investigations in there, and the officials who might stand trial, and some of them having the OSP's investigation have bought apartments with some of the monies that the OSP suspects were gotten out of corrupt and corruption-related activities involving these persons. Take a look at this.
Contractual arrangements between Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited and the Ghana Revenue Authority for the stated objective of the enhancement of revenue assurance in the downstream petroleum sector, upstream petroleum production, and minerals and metals resources value chain. 2. Termination of a distribution, loss reduction, and associated network improvement project contract between the Electricity Company of Ghana Limited and Beijing Xiaochen Technology BXC. 3. Procurement of contractors and materials and activities and payments in respect of the National Cathedral project. 4. Activities and payments in respect of a contract awarded by the Ministry of Health, initially commenced by the Ministry for Special Development Initiatives to Service Ghana Auto Group Limited for purchases and after-sales service and maintenance of 307 Mercedes-Benz Sprinter 305 CDI ambulances for the National Ambulance Service.
Well, that's Kisieja being there. And these three persons were amongst 8 individuals who were arrested this week by the special prosecutor. Let's put them on the screen right now. These are a former Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority, Reverend Dr. Amishadai Osuamwa. And then also we have Dr. Isaac Crenshaw and Christian Tetesoti, both former top officials of the Ghana Revenue Authority. Reverend Dr. Amishadai Amwa was a former Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority. These were the first 3 who were arrested, and then some of them granted bail. And then later, we got to know that after these persons were arrested, there were additional persons as well. Ivan Sedusei, Chief Executive Officer of SML, Ivan Sedusei, and then one Philip Mensah, a former Deputy Commissioner in charge of legal at the Ghana Revenue Authority, is now a legal consultant to SML. And Kofi Nti, also a former Commissioner General, and Joseph Kuruk, Public Procurement Authority official, and together with Faustina Ajoko as well. And all we saw with this particular SML deal, as we do know, the number of infractions that the KPMG report even reported or captured. We don't have the full complement of the reports, but we know that the highlights that were released sometime last year was even pregnant with so much detail. It got a lot of us thinking and concerned. If you look at the evolution of this contract, right from the period when, according to the KPMG report, SML changed from SMEL, which was to provide transaction audit service. On the 22nd of November 2017, they changed their names to SML. Fast forward GRA extended the transaction audit with SML. SML then transitioned to become the main contractor without, take note, without Public Procurement Authority approval on the 1st of January. This was 2019. Fast forward, we saw how it all played out. They didn't even have parliamentary approval based on what the KPMG report said. There was no needs assessment made as to exactly what was needed and why this was being engaged. According to the KPMG report, even the rationale for the procurement was made without any needs assessment. The SML provision of services was also without a Public Procurement Authority approval. The contracting of the SML was without GRA board's consideration and approval. There was no deduction of VAT by GRA for an 8-month period on payments to SML, which resulted in the loss of over 13.38 million Ghana cedis. That's financial loss to the state, essentially. And this was a period between 1st September 2020 and 30th April 2021. And then all of this, according to the KPMG report, all these laws, they said they identify potential breaches. The 1992 Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, GRA Act, Public Financial Management Act, National Petroleum Authority Act, National also Value Added Tax, Public Financial Management, Petroleum Commission Act, Minerals Commission, Precious Mineral Marketing Company Act 200-461, Ghana Standards Authority Act 2022. All these said as potential breaches that the SML contract captures. How much people? I mean, hearing this week, this action by the special prosecutor, these 8 persons who were picked up, and I mean, look at their profile: former Commissioner General, Deputy Commissioner. All these persons involved based on the OSP's arrests and how this case has evolved till this point, where we've seen some of these persons, top echelons of the GRA, also being picked up within the week. How do you see things playing out? Very quickly.
Oh, well, it's the right thing to happen, right? Finally, at least finally, there's some accountability. Because, Mr. Ocansey, when this story broke, right, in the previous administration, you know that because Akufo-Addo was in the business of a clearing agent, he quickly got KPMG to do this audit. You know that KPMG had been quite charitable to Akufo-Addo. You remember a lot of civil society organizations said, no, KPMG shouldn't do this job because it had too many government contracts, was too close to Akufo-Addo's regime. They did it, and even you see with KPMG, so we saw a lot of bad stuff going on. Of course, if we had a more independent audit firm, we expected that the results would have been worse. So the key thing is that it's good that the OSP is also, finally coming up to speed to some extent on this matter, right? Because you know that OSP was being gagged. You remember the Kissie Jabin famous Ankwanuma press conference where he kept asking Ghanaians, are you ready to fight corruption? Are you ready to fight corruption? Are you ready to fight corruption? Right? I said that well, but he stopped short. He didn't match up to Martin Amidu, who could specifically call out Akufo-Addo's henchmen who were gagging him and frustrating him. And that's one thing I consistently remind Kissie Jabin that he has to do. Look, sometimes this fight, if you want to do, he who fights and runs lives to fight another day, they may not be that other day. You see that though Martin Amidu didn't stay in that office for long, you know that when he came to the famous Ejapa deal, he called out names. He mentioned how the president and Ofori-Atta tried to interfere in his work. Of course, he should have stayed on. The fact that Amidu says Akufo-Addo asked him to give Ofori-Atta a hearing shouldn't have been enough for Amidu to resign. But that's the kind of examples we want Kissie Jabin to live up to. Yes, Martin Amidu didn't stay long enough to do court cases like Kissie Jabin was doing. But when Amidu had the opportunity, he was very clear. He was clear. He named and shamed people who tried to interfere. The only time I've seen Kisei Jabin come close is what he did to Professor Jampo, that Jampo had contacted him. But that one wasn't sufficient. Kisei Jabin, you know very well how Akufo-Addo's ministers and government appointees came to you. You never reveal those people. But Jampo, like they say, Cotton, Nobodre, right? So Jampo deserves to be named. But when, what do you call it? Akufo-Addo's henchmen and even Akufo-Addo himself was frustrating. You weren't bold enough to name them. But now you would want to name Jampo. I looked at it and I laughed. I said, what? Jampo's communication with Kisei Jabin didn't go far enough to merit what happened. The people who sought you, even look, if you take the NDA case, the NDA case, Kisei Jabin slapped the people with soft offenses.
Why do you say soft?
Yes, initial, just the procurement offenses. It was Isidore Tufuo.
But is that matter still running in court?
Yes, they've opened their defense. So Isidore came in, reviewed it, and now ratcheted up the offenses to proper corruption offenses. This was playing it soft. Look, even Akufo-Addo's friend, Napaga Clara Sulemana, because of her closeness with Akufo-Addo, she was in charge. The main person, this NDA case, Napaga Clara Sulemana, she had to, approve. The final madam to approve the transaction. How come you charge all the people and left her? We all know that she's close to Akufo-Addo.
I get the fact that I know you were neck deep in this case.
Yes.
Let's redirect back to the SML.
Yes, so what I'm saying is that, OSP had been slow, okay, in coming to SML, had been slow. But finally, it's okay that they've come. Because I thought that, in September 2023, they got a lot of employees, right? Parliament approved earlier in the year for them to employ over 200 employees, around 230 something, right? Yes, of course, not everybody would have taken up the position. But with the numbers increase, one would have thought that some of these cases, it would have been, they would have gone much faster because it's now that this, what do you call it, Amishada Usu Abuaji and co have been arrested. It looks a bit slow. You have to decentralize. The system itself was too centralized, and it's still too centralized around the OSP. So remember earlier on I had mentioned that, look, when petitions go there, it shouldn't be left with Kisei Jabin alone to look. It should go to a board so that there's transparency. There's transparency, because some of these cases, I'm sure if the other directors were put in, like a petition arrives at the OSP, it goes to the whole board, a committee that looks at it, there will be much speed. But where everything is centralized around the OSP, you won't get the desired speed. If we don't hold the OSP accountable, we will not get better results. So we shouldn't be shy. I'm not shy to support Kisei Jabin, as and when I also feel that we have to put in fire for him to be more transparent in the work, etc. We have to. There's no space for shyness or the fact that I've known Kisei for over 20 years. That means that we shouldn't say anything. He's known Jampo for over 20 years. Okay, they were mates in Lagos, but still he put Jampo on the spot. So it's the same thing. We all this matter of, oh no, don't shake this table, don't rock the boat. It's not getting us far. No, we have to hold government institutions accountable. So SML is come on. These are arrests. Every two lawyers are here, ABG and then a lawyer. Kwesi will tell you that as for arrests, it's just preliminary. So rather than start celebrating now, we'll wait for the day the case will make it to court. We'll wait for the day the case will make it to court, because today is what, 28th.
Today is 28th.
28th. You remember the MPA, Mustafa Hamid's MPA. Kisei promised us that by end of the month, the case will be in court. Today is 28th, Saturday. So Sunday, 29th. So we have Monday. Okay. So Kisei Jabin, gentle reminder. From the way he said it, I thought that by now, it should have, made it to court. But 28th, we still haven't heard anything. Well, okay, we'll wait till Monday. You see. So let's see. So SML, arrest good. But please, we all know, you can arrest somebody and keep him in custody for 100 years. If the case doesn't go to court, and if he's not convicted, we haven't done anything against his record, apart from maybe having incarcerated him, kept him in custody for maybe a few days. So I won't celebrate too much the arrest, because the arrest in itself is not a criminal conviction. So I'd rather continue to urge OSP to double up, and then let's enter court, because that is where the real game is, and then they would answer. Yes, okay. Yes, that's what I'll say for now.
Well, and talk about the NPA, because you just referenced that the current CEO of the National Petroleum Authority is just joined us in the studio as well as a private legal practitioner in good standing, Godwin Edijitamaklo. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning to you, Alfred. Good morning to your cherished viewers and now online listeners.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
And my distinguished learned senior, my friend.
Thank you, DG.
My friend.
Thank you.
There's nobody who knows sports law, football law than this man. Anything GFA related, sports law and everything, I mean, he's a go-to person.
Thank you.
We maintained that relationship for a while.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for the platform. Yes, I know the circumstances under which I have to be here.
Indeed.
So once again, good morning to everyone. That said, you see, aspects of the SML investigation directly impacts on the work I do. Because of the revenue assurance bits in the downstream petroleum sector. Remember that this whole thing is a contract for revenue assurance and the subsequent consolidation of the agreement. And the whole idea to, as it were, audit the petroleum downstream. Exactly the place that I basically sit as the acting CEO. I am aware that my office has been cooperating, and some of my officers have been cooperating with the Office of the Special Prosecutor on this particular SML investigation. A lot have gone on. So in terms of the merit or otherwise, I'm a bit constrained, because who knows? I may be called as a witness maybe in this matter. In the sense that, you see, most of the claim relates to whether or not, and from Manasseh's write-ups, and remember that they originated this whole investigation. Manasseh, the Fourth Estate, among others.
Yeah.
And the claim has always been that there was no need, right, for the SML engagement. Because the NPA was already in the process of doing that revenue assurance. Because they're able to generate the data, and we have other schemes in place that allows for the issues of pricing, the issues of ensuring that products are not diverted, among other things. And so, to Manasseh, there was no need at all for the contract. Those who signed it also believe that there was. So far, so I wouldn't want to comment so much into the merit. The only thing I want to say, that a few things strike me when the OSP announced that they are effected some arrests. I found it extremely curious, and here is my curiosity, that some named officers of SML used to work with GRA.
Yes.
The contracting party.
Yes.
In the sense that it appears at the time when the contract was consummated, the CEO of SML used to be a technical advisor to
the GRA.
One wants to find out the nature of disclosures relative to our conflict of interest laws. What were the nature of disclosures that were made prior to engagement? is it possible that a technical advisor to GRA, upon leaving office, can immediately engage in an activity with a company that, say, obtained a contract at the time that he was working there?
Right.
They have also mentioned that there used to be a lawyer for GRA,
Philip Mensah,
who today happens to, one way or the other, either consult for or work for.
Okay, that's Philip Mensah, former Deputy Commissioner in charge of legal. He's now serving as legal consultant to SML.
And others. That is where I find it a bit curious. At this
Why?
point, I will hasten slowly in making any imputation of crime or otherwise. What I do know, that there are clear rules on conflicts. So, for instance, today, I act as deputy CEO, act as CEO or of the authority, and you have a situation where I am no longer in that office. A contract that was signed under my tenure, a company that, say, obtained that contract, I am no longer at MPA and now consult for that company, or I now work as CEO for that company. You see, for us public servants, the responsibility on us a bit more higher. We are put in a situation where we need to conduct our affairs like Caesar's wife. You know, there shouldn't be a circumstance where Caesar's wife will get to a point where there will even be rumor that Caesar's wife, Cleopatra, has anything to do with Mark Antony. We shouldn't get there.
Indeed.
You understand?
Yes.
As human institution as we are, maybe with the benefit of time, we would understand exactly what informed the decision by these gentlemen to be related by way of working relationship with a company that obtained some contractual relationship with the Ghana Revenue Authority. More importantly, at the time when the one way or the other worked. Does this suggest some level of insider trading? These matters will be coming up at the right time. But like I pointed out, because of the cooperation between the agency, the authority ahead, and the office of the special prosecutor, I would want to leave the merits, the nots, the have-nots, for the purpose of this discussion.
And I respect that. I respect that. And you talk about some curiosity, something that you're curious about.
Yes.
Is it what you spoke about, or exactly what tickles your curiosity about this
that's
matter,
the point.
as it has evolved to this point? Maybe very quickly. I'm not going to indulge you too much.
Yeah, the point I'm making is that imagine me at the CEO of MPA acting. I enter into a contract with a company called Martin Kwebu and Sons Limited, or Martin Kwebu LLC, to do revenue assurance for the authority. Now I leave the authority, okay, and Martin now employs me, right? Employs me as the CEO of the company that obtained a contract at the time when I was CEO. It may not be, but it will create an impression that the contract was prepared ahead of my leaving the authority. Do you get it?
Yes.
And like we always say, a multitude of suspicion is not enough basis to ground criminality.
Yeah.
But that threshold, should we get there? So I am a bit mindful this morning not to say ABC. Look, on the issue of Procurement Act, I think that I have, within the past 12 years, litigated the Procurement Act very well in our courts. I've litigated it so well. I've argued many aspects of the Procurement Act. You recall, in the NCA matter, my clients were convicted for breaches of the Procurement Act.
Yeah.
I remember vividly before His Lordship Justice Chebafo, when I made this argument that under the Public Procurement Act, a breach does not automatically result in criminality unless you are able to establish a mens rea, because the Procurement Act did not create a strict liability offense, so that a breach is a breach. It's like traffic offense. Once you cross the red light, no explanation is enough. Strict liability. My argument was the reverse, that under the 1992 Constitution, you must first establish that at least there is a mens rea, and then there is an actus reus. You must establish a guilty mind. You must establish that A, B, C, D. That argument, even though attractive, did not find favor with His Lordship Justice Chebafo.
Yeah.
And therefore proceeded that to the extent that my clients entered into the contract without the approval of the PPA, it constituted their guilt and convicted them 4 years imprisonment. You understand? I remember in the Atofose matter, Sylvester Animana was also charged for breaches of the Procurement Act. In the Opuni matter as well, and many, many other such. I think that we've possibly gotten to a point where we may have to look at the act again. What's the threshold of guilt? Is it the mere fact that a contract was signed into without? If that is the law, like somebody said, the law is the law.
The law. We know who said that. Yes.
You understand? That's one aspect of it. Is it an evolving legislation that we begin to appreciate its learning and the evolution of our procurement laws? So that, for instance, Section 90 of the Public Procurement Act provide a mechanism for redress. So I remember one of the arguments that I made before His Lordship Justice Chebafo, because my clients at that time, Director General of the organization, entered into the contract. So the argument I placed before him was that, look, in the wisdom of the maker of the law, the fact that he provided a procedure for cancellation ratification in the law means that he envisaged a situation where a contract can be entered into without PPA approval and therefore can go for ratification. And that is why the legislator made that provision. And so if we've not gotten to the point where an opportunity, say, for rectification, cancellation, and all of those things, where the PPA will constitute a committee to investigate the alleged breaches and others and recommend whether the contract should be rectified, or cancelled, the point of criminality has not arisen. That view was completely rejected, and they were convicted. So if you look at the detail in the KPMG report relative to the SML, there are specific claims of breaches of the Procurement Act, among other things. I want to see the view that the OSP and our courts, assuming this matter ends up in court, will take, so that it serves as a guide to all of us who are into public service.
Well, it's a fair point, and let me also at this point acknowledge the presence of the celebrated Kwame Ansasa.
All of us, our boss.
Yes.
All of us, our boss. All of us, our boss.
He's a former director of the Ghana School of Law.
We've not celebrated this man enough.
Indeed.
We've not celebrated this man enough. And maybe let me just join my colleagues here in celebrating him. Prof, we thank you so much.
Indeed.
We thank you. Thankfully, today, all of us are your sons.
Thank you so
All
much
of us are your sons.
for
And,
agreeing.
boss,
Indeed.
we thank you so much.
Yes, thank you
We
for
thank
agreeing,
you.
waking up this morning to join us. Kwame Ansasari. Kweku Ansasari, I beg your pardon, is a former director of the Ghana School of Law. And then also, we understand he was lecturing this morning and had to leave to join us. I thank you so much.
His mind is so valid.
Ocansey, I wonder,
My colleague has made
Ocansey,
a very interesting point which I think needs to be looked at again. You see, most of the bulk of our principles are derived from English law.
Yes, sir.
Now, procurement breaches or issues or questions pertaining to contracts, sale of goods, buying and selling, entering shops, where goods are, have been shelved and all that. An English court will first look at the general law of contract to see whether there have been any violations before even crossing the threshold to go into the area of criminality. Our courts have not, done that, and therefore the illustration he gave, which is analogous to a situation that occurred in a case they are all familiar with, Fisher and Bell.
Yes.
See, the court did not proceed immediately to make a pronouncement, but examined the surrounding circumstances to find out whether the display amounted to invitation to trade or offer.
Right.
And then and only then did they proceed to look at and apply the general law of contract to the issue that had arisen in Fisher and Bell, and said under the surrounding circumstances no offense had been committed. But here the court begins with a mindset, and the moment that mindset is consummated, there's conviction. I think the approach is wrong. That we must, our court, our judges must do a bit of analysis before implementing provisions of the Procurement Act, because some of the things may not be offenses, but because they arise from the Procurement Act, it is assumed that an offense
has been committed.
Yes, or there have been violations or breaches of.
In fact, this matter is a rolling stone, as I indicated. It's just evolving, but it's an important point that you make, Mr. Ansasari, a former director of the Ghana School of Law. Like we said, on this, especially because the special prosecutor had indicated, and you're right. The last press conference that the OSP addressed, he indicated that by end of month, end of this month of June, some top officials of NPA specifically, and this whole SMM matter were going to be put before court. And today is the 28th. So yes, we'll see. Maybe on Monday something will happen. But like question, this matter does and how it's evolved to this point.
In Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's book, write-up Julius Caesar, the soothsayer had informed Caesar that on the 15th of March, he will be killed. So late afternoon or evening of 15th March, Caesar reached out to the soothsayer and said, soothsayer, you just said I'll be killed on this day. Then he retorted. He said the Eid of March had come, but not yet gone. Or
yes, exactly.
So maybe give the
Monday.
To Monday. just a quick one on this. So I move on to the next.
Foremost, kindly permit me to commend Manasseh Azuri and then his former colleagues at the Fourth Estate.
Right.
Without them, we wouldn't have gotten to this far. I'm always happy anytime the state takes up some of these challenges that we have as a society. Now, we keep, in analyzing this particular situation, I came to the conclusion that if we as a country, we always say, we are in leadership position, we take our position to help develop the country. And then in the end, the very people who have accepted to come and serve the country are the same people coming under this slogan, create, loot, and share. Then where are we heading as a state? And it's not one instance, it's not twice. Almost every now and then, we keep hearing this. And that is why I particularly had to commend the Manasseh people, because it is not only this that is going on. There are several other situations. It takes the effort of some individuals or some citizens to be able to bring this to the fore. Now, let's say the OSP, whether procedurally they are correct or not, at the end of the day, they've been able to arrest some persons to kickstart the entire process. That said, I feel at the end of the day, once investigations are ongoing, by all means, they will be able to come out with something. I mentioned the create, loot, and share because if you read the story as captured from the investigators, everything points to the fact that this is a well thought out something, without necessarily trying to go into the merit, because investigation is ongoing. But if you look at the persons involved, and it saddens me, at the end of the day, we had a pastor in there also, playing this sort of like double role thing. Some functionary from the GRA, at the end of the day, were also seen playing some roles in the SML. So automatically, the ordinary citizen comes to hear of this story, and then will be able to conclude that then straight away, it came from some powerful element within the government. Now, I will also call for a review of the PPA Act. I think it's high time we did something about it. Before, we're all relying on Parliament, that some of the contract, some of the key arrangement from government will have to pass through Parliament. Then came the PPA also. But I think the major loophole that politicians often exploit is the aspect that the same act that we say go through ABC will then come back and say you can ignore all the ABC and still go for sole sourcing. And that is where the major challenge is. Then we ask the question, 2 years ago, we had some government officials at the Embezzle Fund. 5 years ago, some government official at the Embezzle Fund. So the question is, what then was the role of Parliament? You see? So along the line, much as I am advocating for changes in the PPA, I feel as part of my recommendation, see, we shouldn't always be criticized. Sometimes we should also propose solutions.
Okay.
My recommendation moving forward, I think what will help us as a country and as a state moving forward is for us to have a very robust and strong institution that will not come directly from the government, but then an autonomous body. And if permission is given me, I will recommend a body like the General Legal Council to play some extra rules. General Legal Council, because the composition itself, we might not believe this, but the few time I have had the opportunity to meet some judges in private and then in court, I have realized that most of them are God-fearing. And then they are also principled in their doing, especially those at the Superior Court. Now, if you find the personalities we appoint to be part of the General Legal Council, I feel they will do a better job than any other body. Because Parliament has also disappointed us. And the people we appoint on to be on the PPA board, from the stories we hear every now and then, will often collude with them. So in the end, they will still siphon the state resources and so on and so forth. So moving forward, I feel we need a very strong body
Right.
that any government contracts involving finances or involving money of a certain threshold must of necessity be put before this particular body, so that in future you and I will not be sitting here again and be discussing this.
It's a very important point.
Because before the SML came, we had issues of the PDS. Then the citizen came after it. It was shut down. At the end, the Minister of Energy at the time had to even resign and so on and so forth. Then we swept it somewhere. Then we also heard that there was an offshoot of it. That was the Japa deal. That one to the citizen did very well and then fought against that.
Okay.
Then at the tail end, this one is also coming. So if you trace the history, we see element of this just because there are loopholes in our laws that any executive arm of government can exploit every now and then to loot, to create loot and then what? Share among themselves. Oftentimes, we will be zeroing in and then focusing on only 2 or 3 CEOs. But then if you dig deeper, you come to the realization that it might come from some unseen hands.
And we hope that the OSP's investigations would uncover these unseen hands that you're talking about. But thank you, like I said. And while I draw down the curtains on this matter, go on to the next, the head of the Financial Intelligence Center here in Ghana, Kojo Chumbuafo, says, good morning. My greetings to Uncle Kweku Ansansari. In 1996, he actively sought to encourage me to enter the law school. At that time, I didn't know about the concept of family and friends. I would have listened to him and done so, but it's not too late. You are still considering, so as you have indicated. Thank you very much. It is indeed not too late. And that leads us to the next matter, because this week, something unprecedented happened. The Chief Justice that is going through this process, as enshrined in Article 146, addressed the nation through a press conference about the removal process that she is going through. She says it has been reduced to ordinary litigation between petitioners and herself, and that the removal process is unconstitutional. It violates the dictates of the Constitution. It's illegal, and every manner of the process breaks every rule on how justice is delivered. That's her verdict. Take a look.
Unfortunately, every step of the removal process being undertaken against me is being done in a manner that breaks every rule on how justice is delivered in our country. And this is why I find the need to draw the nation's attention to the serious violations of the Constitution and law in the process, and the danger it holds for the development of the nation's democracy. The removal process being undertaken against me is being done in a manner that breaks every rule on how justice is delivered in our country. And this is why I find the need to draw the nation's attention to the serious violations of the Constitution and law in the process, and the danger it holds for the development of the nation's democracy.
Well, that's Chief Justice Gertrude Esaba took on her leadership. She has also indicated that, you're one of the first persons to have recommended or proposed to her that she should consider resigning, right?
Yes.
Right from the onset of this, she said she should consider resigning to save herself of, whatever will play out.
Yes.
She says it's not on the table. She has heard that advice that you offered, but it's not an option on the table. And this is why. Take a look.
Or retiring while Article 146 proceedings are being conducted to remove a judge. It's not an option any judge or public official can even have. There is a decided case on the matter by the Supreme Court. The suit number is J6/02/2019. Again, no one has the authority to walk away from proceedings started by the state. Judgment can be entered against you because you fail to defend yourself. And a judge who resigns or retires would still lose all entitlements that they have worked for because they failed to defend the claims and resigned or retired while the proceedings were still going on.
Well, so to the likes, Lawyer Matibebe, of you who held that view and made that proposal, that's the answer to you. It's not on the table. It's not something that should even be considered because of the details you have just given. Counsel, that's a response to that proposal you made. That's just a quick one. Is it one you still stand by?
No. Oh, but you remember, coincidentally, that week, I was on the panel here with Edigi. So Edigi cited the Justice Amwa case. That one is even earlier, 2015. Right. That time JM was in his first term, right? And then, when each topic comes, you keep researching. You'll never finish researching. So when this press conference came and I went to look at the Justice Derry case, all right, Paul Derry case, all right, the Supreme Court mentioned that again. So, and then the Chief Justice cited a third case. But this Justice Derry case is also 2015, 2016. So we had already, as I've said, the Supreme Court is the final arbiter. If they've said so, generally that's the law. But we can continue to advocate. I yield that there is a Supreme Court decision. But still, there is also wisdom in the proposition that resignation should be afforded people in that class in certain circumstances, right? Yes, because to every rule you find an exception. So let's look at this. Ghana has there's an evolving democracy. Now you've seen, because she doesn't have an option to resign, you see she's fighting back, and with the way she's fighting back, you see all the things that she's throwing out. Yeah, come on. If we all look at our judiciary now and as our nation, I'm sure by now it will be clear to a lot of us that, it looks like if we could get a resignation for her, it would have been better than this fight. Yes, because now she's dragging everybody down with her.
You say everybody who?
The committee, right? The president, etc. I think too many people are being dragged down. You see, so, well, in a way, it's helping to break the virginity of certain topics. Certain topics we would never want to discuss because, we've evolved. A few years ago, you didn't even want to talk about certain things in the courts. I remember even last year when we were discussing, when Chief Justice Tokonu wrote a letter to Ekufuado and we said, no, it's unconstitutional, we're discussing it here. Hey, lots of lawyers were like, why don't you leave this alone? So what I'm saying is that as a society, when it comes to talking about the judiciary, etc., it's a taboo topic generally. It's a taboo topic. But you see that we are breaking it gradually. But with this press conference, too many boundaries have been broken. So now you see that the conversation is gone higher. And the way it's gone higher, so many imputations of wrongdoing and etc. It kind of affects the system. It looks like this press conference has broken too many boundaries, brought in too many topics for discussion at a go than even the system can take. So sometimes when you look at it, then you see that, hey, Charlie, if we had arranged a resignation, overall would have been better. You see, because the truth be told, at least with the wrongdoings that have been alleged, I'm not going into them. So far, I'll just use what she has said, because I still go by the Supreme Court decision that, even in the Justice Derry case, that the fact that petitions have leaked or evidence have leaked, it's no justification for us to then descend and go in and discuss fully. No. In the Justice Derry case, they say if we did, it would be contempt of court. So even Chief Justice Tokoni herself has opened herself up for a contempt case.
So with the address, this press conference that she addressed, would she have possibly swayed into the arena of contempt?
Oh, yes, possibly. Yes.
With this press conference?
Yes.
Giving
yes.
out the details of the petition?
Yes, and
her?
everything is done. Yes, it's up to the committee to take it up to the High Court. So let's be very clear. The committee doesn't have powers of contempt for this to itself, but it has to then refer it to the High Court. But I'm sure she did a calculated guess, knowing that because of the office she still occupies, she's suspended, she's not been removed yet. As a society, we will be slow to say she should be hauled to the High Court for contempt. Yes, I'm sure she knows that she has at least some goodwill not to be taken to the High Court for contempt. That's why she did that, right? But me, how can I guess that? So let me be careful. Because it's possible that I will be hauled to the High Court for contempt and she would not be.
That is if you get into the merits of this
exactly.
matter.
So
but
please,
she
let
had
me
reason.
steer clear of...
I see. She had reason. Yes. Why she did this, and even addressed the press. She had 4 stated reasons. That she's the one going through it alone, but the effect reaches beyond her, and so on. She had a position on the secrecy of this entire process, and why she at some point, if you recall, during her application to the Supreme Court, one of the reliefs she was seeking was that there's some rights that she had that could be waived, and this whole process telecast so that we would see what the process of the hearing is like. The Supreme Court did not grant that. So she sought to give out the details through this press conference, which you say has slipped into the arena of contempt. But she had reason why this entire secrecy of the process, she says, will not prevent her from putting out some matters in the public so that the public will know. Those were her words, but take a look at this.
I applied for the proceedings of the committee set up by His Excellency the President to be held in public, so that in the interest of transparency and for the truth in the matters being raised to be made known to the people of Ghana. I did so because I knew that the secrecy of the proceedings for removing justices was not created in the Constitution as a cover-up for any agenda. The Constitution expects that only reasons for removing the Chief Justice and public officials as set out in Article 146 will be the reason for doing so. And especially, such reasons must affect public sensitive national interest or public order or safety.
It shouldn't be used as a cover-up for any agenda whatsoever, this secrecy of the process, as enshrined in the Constitution. So in her view, people must know.
Okay. So, Mr. Ocansey, yes, she said she had a reason for doing so. But when you read everything, okay, sum up everything she's done, those are grounds for her to go to the High Court. And indeed, she's done it. So she's in the High Court too. She's filed an application for judicial review.
Yes.
So ordinarily, if I had filed such a case and I came here and started going into the details, quickly, Eduji will point out that, hey, Martin, you have the case in the High Court. Stop. You can't do this. I can only mention that maybe I've sued. But to go into details like she did, lawyers would have called in contempt, right? So, Mr. Ocansey, everything she said, she's already before the High Court. These are matters before the court. That's why I said that, yes, the lesson we are learning from it is that there is equality in the law, but to every rule too, there are exceptions. Yes, that's what we should learn. I mean, yeah, we are all equal before the law, Article 17 of the Constitution. But when you even go to Article 17, you see positive discrimination, all right? That, I mean, you know, with certain areas of our society, people are vulnerable, etc. We should help them, right? So Chief Justice Tokono also knows that, well, yeah, she served Ghana to the highest extent, and so people will not lightly say that, take her to the High Court for contempt. That's how come she has the leverage to do what she did. But of course, lawyers who have been very clear in reprimanding Chief Justice Tokono that, no, please, yes, we reckon that you've served, but this one is a bit too much. So that one too, we'll put it on record that it's a bit too much. But overall, it's because of the service she's rendered. That's how come she can get a bit of more leverage than the ordinary lawyer or any other person for that matter. So the reasons are not sufficient for what she's done, because the law is very clear. You read from Frankie J. Chum, all the Supreme Court decisions, like we don't have to be mentioning the name, let's just go on with the main arguments. All the Supreme Court decisions are clear that for these proceedings, we shouldn't come out and discuss their merits. And that even after petitions and evidence have leaked, it is still no excuse to continue. It is still no excuse to continue the debate. So stop. That's why I mentioned that Chief Justice Tokonu may be free. I may get into trouble if I waded in too much.
But has she done herself any good in addressing the press this week and putting out this detail? Has it helped the case for her in the court of public opinion in any way?
You see, the jury is still out, right? The jury is still out. So for that, I'll be slow. The jury is still out, because remember that she has supporters, right? And also me, even a certain part of me too, earlier on when this matter came on, I'd advocated that in the next constitution, and H. Kwesi Prempeh, chairman of the Constitution Review Committee, has also put it out that we won't have that blanket in-camera proceedings anymore. No, that's anachronistic. We've gone past that. Even the Western world, look at US and Co, where they came to learn civilization from us. In the US, it's done in Congress. It's open. Then they vote on the matter, right? Yes, it's done in Congress. That's open. So the hearing is done. Then they vote openly. Why are we hiding it? We've grown up as a society. I think, yes, we are still evolving. Colonialism truncated our growth, etc. But as for holding this Article 146 proceedings in public, I think we've reached there. And that's how come, maybe, as I mentioned, we'll make provisions for resignations to, etc. So we blend the two. Because currently, you can see that Ghanaians are yearning to know what's going in there. But, sorry, the door is shut, firmly shut on us. That's not good for our democracy. When we make it open, it's also a form of accountability to all Article 146 office holders. Let me say Article 146 office holders, because this Article 146 doesn't apply to only the Chief Justice, nor the Superior Court Justices. When we say Superior Courts, that's High Court, Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. No, it doesn't apply to them alone, but also SHRAJ commissioners, NCCE, and then Electoral Commission. They are also then NMC, National Media Commission. All these people is the same thing. Article 146, if you want to remove them, you go through 146. Right. So because of that, I mean, you look at it, it will help in accountability. Let's say if we knew that, hey, once you are in a certain office, when you did anything wrong and they are going to do the hearing, it will be broadcast live. Generally, every day, in everything you did, you would be careful, knowing that, hey, this thing, if it comes out, they will discuss it publicly. So that in itself will put fear in the office holders to walk the straight and narrow. And you see, earlier on, Eduji mentioned the live beyond reproach, Caesar's wife's test. Yes, in the Justice Paul Derry versus Anas Tiger PI, etc. They mentioned it. The Supreme Court said, yes, Caesar's wife's test applies. Okay. So if you want to avoid trouble, it's good. So that all of us are held in check, right? So so the point is that the press conference is done is advocacy for us to amend the Constitution. Amend it, that's in future, but this current one, we are stuck. So remember when the topic first came, like one of the times we discussed it a few weeks ago, I had said, oh, we should go and do Musa Dankwa should do a poll, etc. But the responses from citizenry on this program and panelists and everything was very clear that, listen, once this constitution says in camera, please go by it. I agree. So these arguments about make it open, that's in the future constitution. Please, to be clear, these arguments that make it open, etc., we are talking about the future constitution that H. Kwesi Prempeh and the rest are crafting. But as for the current proceedings, the law is clear. The law is the law, no matter what I see. It says that it should be in camera. And so we are following the rules on in camera proceedings. Right.
I see. Let me bring in Lady Jutamaklo on this matter, because the Chief Justice was quite clear, and we'll put that on the screen, the 4 reasons why the suspended Chief Justice did this press conference, as she put out herself. These were the 4 reasons. They said the removal process is historic with higher stakes, but then again, the position is that this process has been reduced to ordinary litigation between the petitioners and herself. The process itself is flawed, it violates the Constitution, and the manner in which it's being done breaks every rule on how justice is to be delivered. 2, the far-reaching implications of the process goes beyond her, and its effect reaches beyond her as an individual. And the alleged constitutional violations and illegalities of the proceedings, as she put out there, about her lawyer not being admitted before the committee because she didn't accompany him, and the family, and so on. And then the final one about the calls for resignation says it's not on the table, and the alleged threats on her life. She put that there as well, that her resignation will be an admission that this flawed process is acceptable. This entire secrecy of this says it is not meant to pursue an agenda. Has this press conference done any good from where you sit?
Okay, so it's quite an interesting issue. First of all, I mean, like any other Ghanaian, you can call the press and speak to them on anything that you feel strongly about. So her right to address the press is not something that you can take away from her. That is within her so to do. But what she's not permitted to do is to use the processes of a press conference to undermine a constitutionally sanctioned process. I've always maintained that in the wisdom of the framers of the 1992 Constitution, and I say this with all humility, I am not in position to say I am wiser and more intelligent than the people who put the 1992 Constitution together. No, I say this with all humility. In the wisdom of the framers of the 1992 Constitution, they envisage that the Chief Justice can be removed and proscribe or possibly prescribed the method or the procedure for doing same. Chief Justice Tokono is not the first person to have had that process triggered against him or her. Why? In 1995-96, the Ghana Bar Association, the Urban case.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they use a different process, litigation, to achieve the very end of removal. And that is why if you look at the Ghana Bar Association Attorney General, the Urban case, His Lordship Justice Kwega deprecated the conduct of the Ghana Bar Association. Because what the Ghana Bar Association then sought to do was to put the grounds for the removal in a writ. And so as to put the whole matter in public, a clever way of circumventing the secrecy proceedings. His Lordship Justice Ajabin, Justice Kwega and co. said, look, the Association of Lawyers should know better. And then underscored the constitutional reason for the secrecy of the proceedings. And said that the reason for the secrecy is actually to protect the judiciary itself. Imagine a judge goes through the removal process, televised on the tele. Under cross-examination, lawyers can ask all kinds of questions, related, unrelated, even relevant, irrelevant. Say for the judge to say, no, this question, by which time he had asked already. We all do that under cross-examination. We deliberately will ask a question, knowing that this question is not permissible, but to color the mind of the court. Then the judge will say no, or counsel would have to object. Then the judge will say, question overruled. Ask another question. We do that all the time. So in the wisdom of the framers of the Constitution, they wanted a process that would also ensure that you protect the persons involved. Because it may well be that after the proceeding, the person will not actually be guilty of what you are saying.
But everything would have been out there.
Everything would have been out there. So I found it extremely, in fact, I want to be charitable by saying that it's untenable. Professor Kweku says I shouldn't say it's untenable. And that is plain illegality.
Why
what
do
the
you
Chief
say?
Justice did.
Why is it plain illegality?
Because you see, cleverly, she puts the content of the petition in public and try to excite a public conversation on the merits, which invariably would defeat the constitutional reason for the in-camera hearing. I don't think. Look, I think that she's ably represented by lawyers. My senior, lawyer Ayuku Otu, is not a lawyer of mean standing. A very respected lawyer, a man who had risen to the topmost position in Ghana. That is, the office of Attorney General for us among lawyers. To rise to the position of Attorney General, it's not a mean thing. That is the position he got to. She is represented by such a person. What kind of argument that my senior, Ayiko Otu, cannot put before a 5-member committee? In the wisdom of the framers of the Constitution, they wanted at least 2 senior judges to be on that committee. So you let's even say, you do not trust the appreciation of law by Daniel Domelebo and the other 2 on the committee. What about Justice Asiedu? What about Puaman? Is it not curious? When Vincent Asifua issued the writ naming the Attorney General as the defendant, challenging the President's reference to the Council of State, Her Ladyship Justice Tokonu empaneled 5 judges to hear the Vincent Asifua matter. Justice Asiedu was one of them. Is she her case? That at the time when she put Justice Asiedu to be among the 5 judges to hear the Vincent Asifua matter until it was reconstituted, she never trusted his judicial independence, his judicial mind, and that he had cause to believe that Justice Asiedu does not appreciate the judicial oath that he took. Where from this hypocrisy and double standard? You put Asiedu on the writ that claimed that the president ought to have notified you. You remember that incident? Asiedu was there. Who empaneled Asiedu? It was Justice Tokonu. Is it not the same Asiedu that President Mahama had put on the 5-member committee to investigate the claims against you? How come that suddenly she no longer trusts the mind of Justice Asiedu? What changed? There are many instances that she had put Justice Puaman on panels. Having become the Chief Justice of this Republic, she never trusted Puaman's judicial mind. I mean, so where from this hypocrisy? I find it extremely, extremely uncomfortable even discussing this. Look, I have avoided, for obvious reasons, a merit review of the allegations against her. For good reasons. I've restrained myself, all my public commentary. I've always dealt with the legal issues on this matter. She knows. Like she pointed out, the law is the law. I've appeared before her. I wasn't happy with some of the decisions. But like again, I took it that the law is the law. And went home crying. Look, there's something that she did that I find it extremely, extremely, maybe uncalled for.
Why?
But mischievous.
What exactly are you
And
talking
at that
about?
point, I thought she was doing politics.
What exactly?
You see, she made an attempt to try and link the current proceedings to the unfortunate, insane, and dastardly murder of the High Court judges and the army officer. But try drawing a parallel between the fact that the proceedings are happening at Edu Lodge and the events of 1982. What did she do? Cleverly, she says that why is the proceedings happening in Edu Lodge? And claim and then created a false narrative that the unfortunate murder of the judges and the military officer was planned and executed with Edu Lodge in mind. Complete falsehood. Look, I have a copy of the SIB report, the 85-page report, and the Attorney General's comment, 23 pages, were made. If you read the SIB report, there were effectively 3 references to Edu Lodge in the report. The executive summary. In the executive summary at point 7.
While you access that, let's hear exactly what the Chief Justice Geto Tokono reference on this Edu Lodge within their press conference. Take a look at this.
Edu Lodge facility that the hearings are being conducted in featured very prominently in the planning of the murder of judges on June 30th, 1981. And this can be read about in the special investigative report on that terrible event in our nation's history. It will be recalled that there was a Major Samakwa, a military officer who was killed with the 3 High Court justices, who was the Director of Human Resource of GEHOC. He was my uncle and my guardian when I entered the University of Ghana in September 1980. I was also living with him at the time he was abducted and murdered. Was Edu Lodge chosen for my inquiry to make me feel insecure? I think so. And I continue to hold the view that there's no reason why a judicial hearing is being conducted behind the high walls.
Well, so that's the reference to Edu Lodge. They say it featured prominently. These were her words in there.
First of all, the record shows this insane and unfortunate murder of the judges happened in June 1982. Correct, Senior? Good. Look, the same SIB report that she referenced, the executive summary, paragraph 9. Amatekwe and Captain Kojochikata retired, met at Edu Lodge on 31st October 1982. 31st October 1982.
This is a Special Investigation Board report.
Yes. Executive summary, paragraph 9.
Paragraph 9.
Is there. So how did this feature in the planning of the murder? How? A murder that took place in June. The Special Investigative Body, established by PNDC Law 15, started this work. It was in the process of its work, left for it to submit its report, that Captain Retired Kojochikata met Joachim Amatekwe in October at Edu Lodge. October. By which time, the murder had already taken place. Why would you think that Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice, would want to twist these facts? Is to basically draw herself into an event that happened 43 years ago to play on the emotional keyboards of our people. What has that got to do? Event that happened in 82, anybody envisaged that today, having become the Chief Justice, there will be any petition that will require an inquiry against you?
Well, she said it featured prominently. Her uncle was in there. She was living with the uncle when the uncle was abducted.
You see, hold on. One of the things I've always avoided publicly is a commentary on the murder of the judges and the ex-serviceman. For obvious reason. Because you see, it invokes sensibilities. And so, and you see, for us as lawyers, every 31st June, we do the Martyrs' Day, 30th of June, we do the Martyrs' Day celebration. We go to church, we do all those things in remembrance of that dastardly act. And for us never to get there. But you see, if you read the confession statement of Joachim Amatekwe, he provided the context or the reason for that insane, excuse my language, stupid decision of his. It's there. It's in the report. Whereupon he makes the point that as union leader for GIHOC, his boss, director HR at that time, was Major Samakwa, who happens to be the uncle, as her ladyship, the Chief Justice referenced. And that he was dismissed after they engaged in demonstration or something. And thereafter, because he was the head of personnel, he sanctioned his dismissal. So when the PNDC came, Amatekwe conveniently joined the PNDC to get back at this. And says he went to court. When he went to court to challenge his dismissal, the judge who sat on it was Cecilia Kranche Ado. And said when he lost the case and came back and informed the wife that the case he took to court, he had lost it. The wife, who was pregnant, had a miscarriage. And that was when set off all this. It's all in his confession statement. Our country has traveled a path that we have all said we will not go there again. Why throw in this in an inquiry as to whether your conduct A, B, C, D meets the constitutional threshold for your removal? What has the events of 1982, 43 years ago, got to do? Unless, of course, to do politics. And you see, for a young man like me associated with the NDC, first of all, these events happened. I'm sure I didn't even have the mind to even appreciate them. When these events happened, where was the NDC? Where was President Mahama? Was there even anything called NDC? No. So to try to link it today, after 43 years, and said the choice of Edu Lodge was to remind you. I mean, how can you even say that?
Well,
with respect. How can you do that? Unless, of course, you are doing politics with the proceedings involving you. And look, I have told our party communicators, avoid discussing the merit of this matter for a simple reason. One, none of the petitioners is a card-bearing member of the NDC. None whatsoever. The panel members, none of them is a card-bearing member of the NDC. Let me point this. It is sad that President Mahama finds himself in the position of Pontius Pilate. Yes. President Mahama finds himself in the position of Pontius Pilate, where he has to receive the petition from the Pharisees and Sadducees. That is why President Mahama finds himself. But you see, the Constitution itself has some insulation for such situation. It said, don't take that decision yourself. Consult the elders. Consult the members of the Council of State. President Mahama has the history of having used Article 146 before. Loretta Lamte, the shroud boss. The process for her removal among others, happened under the tenure of President Mahama. Loretta Lamptey was appointed by President Mills, an NDC appointee. But when my friend Richard Nyama and Anodompre brought the petition to MPP Store, unlike these petitioners, when they brought the petition against Loretta Lamptey, President Mahama didn't say they are MPP people, so they should clear off. He said, I have taken an oath to uphold the laws of this country, which includes Article 146. Saw the process through. 2015 January, President Mahama suspended Vivian Lamptey, who was going through this impeachment process. How different is it from what has happened today? So how in God's name...
Well, she said the entire process is unconstitutional. In fact, the manner in which it's being done breaks...
Do you know that as High Court judge,
justice is delivered?
The High Court judges that were implicated in Anna's matter were not taken through Article 146. Yeah. Justice Derry, Justice
Paul
Derry, Ado, the latest, many of them, they went through Article 1. It's a leadership, the Chief Justice said, that if there are grounds for her removal as stipulated, was there any other special proceeding for her? I've been struggling. And look, the matters that she raised in the press conference are matters that are addressable through judicial process. For instance, and my senior here will teach us, and they have been teaching us. If your claim is that the petition or the organization is without locus, it's not registered through your search, that's grounds for your lawyer to raise an objection as to capacity. Any one of us here, if we accept a copy of a writ and it's an organization, the first thing we do is to do a search at the Registrar General. If we see that it's not registered, we'll go with capacity. Is that not what we have been doing for our living?
Absolutely.
So it is a matter that there is a legal remedy for. But you see, I have always relied on precedent. Madame Charlotte said, the petitioners who called for her removal, one included a dead person.
A dead person?
Yes. At the time when the petition went to Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and her removal, there was a petitioner that was dead. But Akufo-Addo went ahead, went through the process and removed the 3 electoral commissioners. So what exactly are her complaints? I remember, and she made the point that a copy of the petition was not given to her.
Yes, so she said the one that she said, well, the president forwarded the petitions to her, but then she doesn't know. She doesn't want to assume that the same petition she has is what the committee has for the hearing, so she requested for it.
Please.
Can they be different?
We were in this country where she wrote to President Mahama for a copy of the petition, correct?
Indeed, yes.
President Mahama, graciously, she asked for 7 days. President Mahama gave her 10 days, correct?
Yes.
What did she respond to? Was it not the petition?
Well, she says she can't assume that the same petition she has is what the committee has. So she requested for the copies.
When we go to court and the writ is served on us, is the writ admitted in evidence?
Usually not.
Have you ever gone through court process where you say the writ invoking the court's jurisdiction? And if you look at even CI 47, a writ is defined to include what? A petition. You don't go to court and say, my lord, we've gotten to the point of evidence taking. First, I want to admit a copy of the writ in evidence before. I will make that argument before her ladyship. She will rebuke me instantaneously in court because you don't do that. So how is she expecting that today the petition should be, first of all, tendered in evidence before the proceedings? I mean, I've been struggling to appreciate the legal basis for these claims. And let me make this point. President John Dramani Mahama, on this process, has demonstrated fidelity to the laws of this country. Have you heard President Mahama commented on this issue?
No.
Express a personal view on this matter? No. He has demonstrated that, look, he's a gentleman. No interference whatsoever. Go through. You have the benefit of being represented by an astute and distinguished lawyer, Ayiku Otu. What else are you fearing? But I find it bizarre when, for instance, you go before a committee of this nature and say you want your husband to accompany you to the proceedings.
Why do you find that bizarre? Exactly.
Does it not defeat the in-camera hearing?
That one they are support her.
Please, I know. Already you have even given a view which is contrary to the Constitution. Yes. Your view, his view does serious violence to the Constitution.
I'm coming there. In the future Constitution after the review.
But you see, the point I want to make is that with the greatest respect, there's a reason. If our laws begin to be applied depending on the position that you occupy, and even here, where an invitation is made directly to President Mahama, the oath President Mahama took, who administered the oath? Do you know the one who administered the oath?
The Chief Justice.
Who?
The Chief Justice.
Which Chief Justice?
Gertrude Esabatukono.
And in that, what did she read to President Mahama? On the 7th, Tuesday, 7th January 2025, she will read and President Mahama will repeat after her. She said, I shall uphold the laws, and that if I breach this, I will suffer
the consequences.
The consequences. Then President Mahama will do, repeat after me. Was that not what happened? Was that not what happened? She would do, and then President Mahama would do, repeat after me. And she told President Mahama that if you go against the laws of this country, there are consequences and you face it, including removal from office. Removal from office. So far, has President Mahama done anything not dictated by the 1992 Constitution? The answer is no. So where from this invitation?
Yes, so you straighten your argument. Oh, don't you think she's entitled to see the prima facie ruling? Yeah, but if you go to court and then there is submission of no case, you get the ruling before you continue. It shouldn't, even if it's one line, let us see. So see how you demolish that.
You see where I find this claim completely worrisome.
Why do you find it? Or why do you find it worrisome exactly?
What is the essence of a prima facie case? It's to basically inform you that you have a case to answer. And that at this point, the allegations made against you moves beyond a certain threshold. Is that not the case? So the petition was first given to you. You gave preliminary comment point by point. So to the point that they say there is a prima facie, it means that at this point, the allegations against you are not frivolous. So speak directly to the allegations. Correct.
And so give her like a one-pager. You see, like how Akufo-Addo answered Professor Asariston. It's not difficult.
I think there are two things that we are trying to. I remember in the Charlotte Osei case, right? It was when my learned senior, Tadiosori, appeared with Charlotte Osei before the committee that they even got the benefit of the petition.
Yeah, but now we've deprecated it.
No, please. Akufo-Addo is an astute lawyer.
Oh, he hasn't shown that in practice.
Hold on. His executive secretary then is also a very respected lawyer. Ally, was there anything that happened then that we are not seeing today? Nothing. And even the courts have said, even for prima facie, it should not be reasoned.
It's desirable.
No, please. I beg you. line by line. In fact, if you read the Republic versus Michael Asamoah, you see the view of the Supreme Court. Because they were challenging the fact that it wasn't reason enough. The court said, no. It's just for a judge to say a prima facie case has been made. Open your defense. Yes.
That's not a practice generally, you see.
Please, senior. I had raised that argument previously, and I was confronted with the Michael Asamoah decision.
Yes, and they will depart.
So I will plead with Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice, to trust her lawyers.
You think this action betrays the trust for the lawyers, or
No,
creates
you see,
doubt
an
about
impression
that?
is created that this is a committee with a predetermined conclusion. I don't think it is good enough.
Yeah, that one.
I'll conclude on this. You see, when these matters came, I started to research. And I found something uniquely different with what is happening now. Over the period, from 79, Apalu, the famous Tufo and Attorney General, the court rallied and scuttled the process. Because once they recognized that by Apalu going before the parliamentary proceedings, the CPP stalwarts who have now come back with Liman, because Apalu has sat on the various commissions of inquiry after Nkrumah's removal, were going to use their majority in parliament to remove him using the parliamentary proceedings. The court came in and scuttled the process. In 1995, when the Ghana Bar Association wanted to use the judicial process to get Aban removed, again the court intervened and scuttled it. When my senior brother Kweti tried removing Chief Justice Akwa, Frank Ajechum, the court intervened and scuttled the process. Why is it that in this particular case, all the judicial attempts, all the processes, the writs, the applications, what have you, have all been roundly dismissed by the courts? What is it about her that is generating that kind of response? Maybe we've gotten to the point where we may all have to do some level of sober reflection. What is it? Why are my own colleagues not rallying? What is happening? Maybe he is an elderly man. Maybe with the benefit he will share insight about life and how to live it. Insight about life. Because you see, you may well be in a privileged position where you think you can use the position, possibly to destroy even your own colleagues. Make them feel bad. And so the urge to rally becomes a difficulty. Maybe. We've gotten to the point where she may want to look within. It is my prayer that she will go through this. If at the end there is no merit in the grounds, these are very honorable people. They'll do what is honorable. I have appeared before His Lordship Justice Pwaman before. I've appeared before Justice Asidu before. And these judges at least have distinguished themselves that they are men of great honor. At least for now, there's no proven record otherwise. And I'm even saying, and I conclude on this, that Her Ladyship herself saw the wisdom in even putting Justice Asiedu when a writ was issued challenging her removal by the MP for Tafo, Vincent Asefua. What has changed?
Well, see, and a question, you are of the strong position that the suspended Chief Justice's reasoning that the committee's failure to indicate the specific allegation in respect of which a prima facie case has been established, as well as the reasons for saying had some legitimacy. ADG has espoused quite clearly that I mean, if you reference specific cases, she may not have any merit in raising that particular concern. You still stand by that?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity again. Honestly and arguably, I'll still stand by my point that in this particular instance and in this particular issue, I would say that the issues are not very strong as against the Chief Justice. But then there are several issues, okay, that come into play. Now, if we follow keenly her press conference, she did mention that the allegation, one of them said his case had been transferred from one judge to the other, and it was sanctioned by this particular Chief Justice. Another petitioner was also of the view that she had traveled and then involved her daughter. Now, like ADG was trying to say, there's been several petitions against former Chief Justices. But in all the instances, when the issues came up, the court itself was able to either cover up or at least rescue the Chief Justice at the time. Now, in analyzing this particular instance, like I've said, really, it shouldn't have been an issue. But that if you do the analysis properly, it comes to the fore that there are some debilitating issues or some factors that have accumulated over the period and then has resulted in this. Now, like I have rightly mentioned, transferring one case from a judge to the other is something they do all the time. Again, to some political functionaries or appointees are able to travel with some family members and so on and so forth. And I said, even that should have been the main issue. But then, looking at the amount involved, they mentioned $14,000. And then this lady spent around $4,000.
Are you not doing a merit review of the petition?
No. They asked me the question.
But what I'm just saying is that that's exactly what she
I didn't ask for the specific detail. And
maybe we
think
can.
we've been restricted.
Okay,
let's
straightforward. But that said, I feel the press conference was wrongly done because there's a procedure to be followed. And then you go past the procedure and you come out with your side of the issue. So technically, you are telling the public and the entire world that this is your version. And if the committee comes to say anything contrary to yours, then it means there's an injustice somewhere. In siding with my brother, he mentioned that
Martin
yes, Martin. He mentioned that at least they should have afforded her the opportunity to defend herself. Going by the 1992 Constitution, that's Article 19. It talks about fair trial. It gives some conditionalities and some provisions where one can follow. That is if you want to go about fair trial. Now, in that provision, we have the aspect that the respondent or whoever is being accused be given adequate, resources to enable the person to defend herself. Maybe in her case, she feels that the particulars or the charges should have been given her to enable her. These are some of the challenges and the loopholes that the Constitution is frowns upon. But that said, I am of the view that this has also some governance and political underpinnings. This governance and political underpinnings are things that you cannot go again. And it's not only in Ghana. Everywhere in the world, things of this nature come up. Particularly so when you have transition or new governments. I'll take you back as far back as in 1801. And the case was decided in 1803 in US of A. You know, they started this democracy stuff and so on. At the time, they didn't even know what they call judicial review. But because of this celebrated case, that's Marbury and Madison. You can Google later and then follow. In Marbury and Madison, the Supreme Court, the CJ, was confronted with this challenge.
Yeah.
There is this new president in office. Then the one who lost the election had appointed some people. Some were able to be endorsed, so they could go ahead in working. But then there were some left that were not given the approval. Now there's a new president, a new government in place. And this Marbury guy wanted the court to compel, because the new government was not forthcoming. They didn't want to approve him. So he went to court challenging the posturing of the new government. And then said, Supreme Court, can you please compel this government or official to either to approve the appointment made by the previous government. Now here was a Chief Justice who was appointed by the previous president. The incoming president is also a relative somewhere. Now he was in the middle. Am I to please my my former, president who appointed me? Or I should please a family member?
Yeah.
Now he sees the occasion, whether by being biased or the family member or what.
Otherwise.
Then he said no. What I would do is that there are three issues here. Does the person have the right to come before us? Yes, I will rule in his favor that he has the right. Now, the process is seeking to ignite. Is it the right way of doing it? He said, yes, I'll prove that one. Now, the third one, the main thing that he wants me to do, that is where me too, I will depart and satisfy the government of the day. Now, the Chief Justice of Ghana is confronted with a similar situation. We have a new president. You were appointed by a previous one. But in my analysis, where I find the difficulty and why all this brouhaha, if you are unable to trace the history, we'll be doing all ourselves a serious disservice. There's a history to that. Just to the birth up of the general election in 2024, there was this serious altercation or back and forth between the Chief Justice and the Speaker of Parliament. There was an issue in Parliament that had been imported into the Supreme Court. And when it went, the Speaker or element of the then opposition party were like, this is a constitutional or procedural breach that we expected the Chief Justice to have done something about it.
What has that got to do with what's happening now? This constitutional process in place, ongoing.
That is what I'm saying.
146.
That's why I even brought in the U.S. case and so on and so forth.
I was asking about the specific reference and bearing that all of those references has on the process that is at play right now under Article 146.
That is what I'm saying. We cannot address this without bringing in some of the key factors and political underpinnings. That is why I brought in constitutionally. All I discussed were all part of constitutional review processes. Do you get my point? But in the interest of the country sometimes, it will be in favor of the Chief Justice not to fight the government of the day. There are so many ways of going about issues. Even where you feel you are at fault, you can appeal to some persons or element of the day within our government sector who, behind the scenes, can even approach the presidency or the government of the day and see how best they can go about it. In coming to 146, some of us were also against the removal of Madame Charlotte Osei and then the other... Yes, exactly. All because we felt it was the first of its kind of a nature. And more so when she was also a woman. We try to encourage women participation in our body politics. The first one has come, and now the second. If I had the opportunity, I would rather not be going on the tangent of trying to defend yourself. You get my point. Because like the antecedent I have given, there is no way an individual can challenge the powers and authority of government of the day, especially going by the provisions we have in our 1992 Constitution, where there are several loopholes, and then more so, the powers, a chunk of it have been given to the president of the day or the government of the day. So where in your attempt of defending yourself or otherwise, the posturing is as if you are somewhat challenging, stemming your authority and challenging the government of the day. You rather incur the wrath, you see, of the government.
Whatever she did, does she have any specific merit or reason that you would align with that legitimizes a decision to let the public know?
Yeah, that's why I mentioned Article 19 of our 1992 Constitution. Okay, it talks about provision for fair trial. And I think it is in that light that my senior Martin Pebu was trying to see that they should have given her the opportunity, okay, to have access to some of the things. And then also the aspect that maybe in future, because this has come up, in some of the positions, we should give the victims the opportunity to decide as to whether they will have to resign as the first option. Because if you offer voluntarily to resign, then in that case, there wouldn't be the need for the state, okay, to do so many things or go through the treasurer's procedures. They cut it off and then maybe can still proceed in going into it. And if there are some further sanctions, the state can also let it be known to you. If you resign, in future, it's going to create the impression that you cannot just do things. And then when you feel it doesn't favor you, you will still be there and be defending yourself. Resignation comes with some other benefits, either to the victim or to the state as well. But she mentioned that if she did that, then it means constitutionally she was also going to lose some other benefits.
Indeed.
So now that there's no law asking her to resign, then she would rather prefer to hold on. My senior espoused some positions that it is preferable and desirable that once they have instituted the proceedings, okay, it is right for her just to stay on, so that to go through everything, and then before she can decide or otherwise.
Yes,
and it was not fair at this stage where they have gotten to for her to decide that this is where I want to resign. But we are of the opinion that if we have that provision also, it's going to help, because all over the world, even with our, if you recall, FIFA matters and some other big cases, okay? Apart from the CJs or Article 1 forces, there are some provisions given that whenever you are confronted with a challenge or you are going to be investigated of a sort, you have the option to decide whether you have to resign or you may want to continue with the procedure. Now, I feel when the issues come, okay, we use that as a case study to make recommendations and then also find some solutions moving forward in future. Now, if she had not done that, we wouldn't know whether in future we should allow people who have been charged of a sort to have such platforms in doing that. And thankfully, there is a constitutional review, that process ongoing, that will give the opportunity for us to decide on some of these.
I needed you to make that point because that's why I want to bring in Sasari. But the suspended Chief Justice sounded a caution. She said it's a warning that she's putting out. And I want us to hear that warning and whether, in your view, this press conference did her case and herself any good whatsoever. Take a look at this. We'll recall that warning that the Chief Justice during that press conference put out. The reason why she says that in her view, as a country, we should all be concerned about how the process is playing out. That's the warning that she put out. Take a look at this.
If the nation is willing to accept these developments in its democratic journey, it must be understood that I sounded the warning and the nation took the decision to be passive about it. I cannot share the burden of those involved in designing and implementing this enterprise of pretending to use Article 146 proceedings to remove a Chief Justice through unknown and unlawful means, by keeping quiet about the violations of law and due process. Neither can I make anyone's burden lighter by resigning or retiring, instead of proving that not even one of these wild claims in a collection of petitions is even remotely true or meets the standard required for removing a judge.
She says this entire process is a pretense of using 146, essentially. And all of that detail, as we are restricting ourselves from going into the merits, not going on that same path, it's not even remotely close to any threshold of removing a Chief Justice. So why are we on this path? Has that press conference made her case any good, at least from what you say?
Well, I've been quiet for I like to first, comment on my friend Martin Pebu's analysis with respect to whether the entire press conference was in contempt of court or not. I think that we as a nation, especially the courts, have to draw a distinction between judicial matters that have been put to rest and judicial matters that are pending or are likely, to be gone into. Where a judge or a committee makes a ruling and it is finished, as far as that issue or question is concerned, commenting on it, is not contemptuous of the court, because it's been done, it's been executed, it's been consummated, finished. You see, elsewhere they will say that a judge has become functus officio, and therefore, in the interest of the public, the citizenry must be encouraged to look at what has happened. The contemptuous aspect will, arise where the matter is pending and a comment is made on it, but not to matters, that have been exhausted. So that's my, comment. And then, that Edu Lodge, I think soberly, we need to appreciate that there are certain memories that evoke sadness. And if she says that she was living with the uncle at the time, and she, recalls with, sadness and nostalgic feelings, the events of that day, and asking her to go back, to that very venue, was too much for her. I think as a nation, we should accept that and try to right the wrong. So my appeal to the committee will be, if indeed, there's concrete or hard evidence that, the uncle was one of the victims of the, June 30th Dastardly Act, I don't think it is fair for the nation to put her, through that sad memory. I don't think, it was right. And it is still not right. And I don't think it would be right to ask her to go back. So that we should, find an alternative venue which would be friendly. He has mentioned Article 19. Fair trial includes, the absence of evocative, memories, such as, murder of a relative. I think we've nodded a little bit, and the right thing, must be done. Now, about this whole press conference, I think that it was unexpected. and in clear violation of Article 146.
How did they violate Article 146 exactly?
Unexpected. A Chief Justice or a Justice of the Superior Court or a chairperson of the Regional Tribunal must not do that. That is what, the Constitution says should not be done. The Constitution says that the entire proceedings must be held in camera. So once you are a participant, you cannot, as it were, do, what the Constitution says you should not do. So it was unexpected. She did it. She has alleged 6 violations, but that's the very first fundamental violation, coming, as it were, from the chief judge, who is in charge of the entire civil justice system, the entire criminal justice system. So it was unbecoming. It was also disrespectful.
Disrespectful to who?
Very disrespectful because, she being the Chief Justice knows that when you go to court, all answers and questions, are to the judge, to the court. So if a litigant is being, uncivilly, the litigant or the party or witness is reminded that you are before the court and your answers are to the court, your questions are to the court. So be civil, be decent, show some, decorum. And she being, the number one, person to uphold and defend that process, and then sacrificing it, to the altar of frustration, I think, was another faux pas. I mean, she shouldn't have done that. The president set up the committee. Any attack, any onslaught is directed, at the president. So she ought to know that what she was doing was disrespectful to the first gentleman.
Disrespectful to the president?
To the president, yes, the first gentleman. And that's, why I say that she should eat a humble pie and apologize to the whole nation. That this is something, upon sober reflection, she shouldn't have done, but she was driven, as a result of the, frustrations, within her, and she felt, she should voice them out. But next time, she may not do that. We all err sometimes. Not only was it unexpected.
You're expecting the suspended Chief Justice to apologize to the nation?
To the nation, yes.
For addressing the press conference?
Yes, because, she's been boxed into Article 146(8). You see, Article 146 carries 11 clauses. And each clause, the president is reasonably expected to act. So if you look at, Article 146(9), the president, every step the president takes must be in accordance with the Constitution. So the chief judge, and interestingly, my friend said it is the Chief Justice who administers the oath and will say, Mr. President, repeat after me, repeat after me. And when we vary, the positions, and this is the Chief Justice, who is subscribing the oath, the President, repeat after me. So both go through the drama. And one cannot therefore outmaneuver the other person and say that, so for me, it is something that should never ever happen. But maybe, as Martin Pebu, rightly indicated, a future amendment, should deal with this issue. I don't think it is fair. I have, been a victim myself before, so I know how one feels within. It is not fair, to tell a person that even though you are in the boxing ring, we are going to tie your 2 hands, and your back, and then the other person will continue hitting you. It is not fair, so we all have to do something about it. No judge is above the law. Not even the president is above the law. All of us are, subject to the law. And Martin Pebu said, You look at Article 17, equality before the law, it is addressed to everyone. It's not only, to the downtrodden, to everyone, including, the president. So that act of disrespect must be addressed by her and the legal team.
I see.
Then it was also unacceptable. Her whole conduct in taking to the press, must be roundly condemned.
Why is that?
Unacceptable.
She stated four specific reasons why
the Constitution
she did that.
The Constitution says, look, when Article 146 is triggered, anything you do, the water you drink, the food you eat, the air you breathe, must be in consonance with Article 146(8). So even if you have reservations, please keep them to yourself, close to chest, at the appropriate time, and the appropriate time is when, everything is over. That would be the appropriate time, to, vent your anger, your spleen, whatever, on that. But not while, the committee, is still, functioning. And you are, after the press, she will go back. She's saying that she's not going to appear. That again will be a serious violation of the Constitution. So she will have to go back. Now, after doing this, what do you expect? When you go back, you have attacked, the committee members. They are doing, what the Constitution, bids them to do. So if Article 146 Clause 8 says that, the proceedings are in camera, what it means is that none, of the events must be done in the glare of the public. That is why it is in camera. So in that regard, it's unacceptable, and I think that again, she will have the opportunity, to do some sober reflection, and if she will take my advice. If she doesn't want to do it publicly, she can write, something to the president. I'm sorry for what I did. At the end of the day, it is for the general public to judge. So history is going to judge whether she was treated fairly or unfairly. If you look at the genesis, of this whole thing, it started with her appointment. It started with her. So if she is, alleging violations of the Constitution, her appointment was in clear violation, of the Constitution. The very Constitution she is now alleging is being, reading roughshod, over her.
I see. Her appointment as Chief Justice?
Yes.
Violated the Constitution?
Yes.
At what point exactly?
Because, you see, at the time of her nomination, Article 146, 4 had made a certain, 144 had made a certain, process that the most senior should act. If the most senior should act, and you go and, invite one who is not, one of the seniors to act, because the most senior means the one who is topmost, you see.
So in this
and
case,
in that ranking, so you have, the most senior, the next most senior, the next most senior, in that order. And therefore, the moment the nomination, was made, I remember on this same platform, drawing attention to what was likely to happen if, and I said, I cautioned that, Mr. President, I hope that this will be the last such appointment where, someone will be, taken out of 10 and appointed to the high citadel, of Chief Justice of the Republic. I made that, clear. And I even, concluded with the bida metujum asemi mihumeka yo enuna. I sang that, this thing. True. And that is what is playing out now. As if, divinely, I had some, hint that it will happen. But I'm a lawyer, a very senior lawyer, and I have always, taken the position that seniority must be respected. I've not been happy, with the appointment of attorney generals, between 12 and 15 years. And no, it is wrong. You take a chief justice, there are about 10, justices of the Supreme Court, you go and pick the 11th. You are, as it were, destroying the very fabric of the judiciary. So because when you do that, junior person is not going to get the cooperation of the seniors, and he or she will see himself or herself, as being, on the, side, alone, single-handedly. So she will, by all means, make recommendations to the president, and that's exactly what she did. Bring in people I can work with. Again, I spoke against it. Don't do that, because if you do that, we are going to have pockets, of supporters within, the Supreme Court. So 5 people on the side of the Chief Justice, another 3 on the side of the most senior, another 3 on the side of the next most senior. It's not good, for our, justice delivery system. It has happened. What do we do next? So even though the press conference was unexpected, it was disrespectful, it was, unacceptable, nevertheless, it's food for thought, and it's a wake-up call that we have been living or coexisting with an ailing judiciary that now needs, some serious emergency operation. And
an ailing judiciary that needs serious emergency operation.
Surgical operation. Well, how do we go about it? Let us respect the framework. The document we call a constitution has carefully, diagnosed the ills of the society and attempted to provide solutions. So if you are dealing with the judiciary, then this is the way to go. Have we observed it? We are always, and I will not say, that her leadership talk on, is the first. It's been happening since independence. Each successive president will have to find, some people, he can appoint, rely upon in the administration of justice. We must have confidence in ourselves, in our institutions, in the Constitution. That if the Constitution says that there are 3 branches or arms of government, and you add the press to make it 4, all of us will do, what the Constitution says we should do, and never do what the Constitution says we shouldn't do. So we have a Chief Justice who has been boxed, into a corner. She feels, hopeless and helpless. She looks around her, there doesn't appear to be anyone supporting her. What must she do? So she threw herself out there into the public, front, and then we are lambasting her. Now, once you lambast her, she will feel that she has been, betrayed. But what she did was in utter betrayal of the very Constitution she, subscribed an oath to uphold and defend. It's a lesson, to all of us that, when we are custodians, and play actors, there are certain things that we shouldn't do.
But you see, underlying all of this, you get her sentiments so expressed in one of the statements that she made, that yes, there's secrecy as enshrined clearly in 1466 to 10, the entire process that she's going through. But then again, if that secrecy was not put there to cover up an agenda, and so even though the Supreme Court did not align with her thinking about this entire process being public, to the extent that she suspects a certain hidden, sinister agenda against her, she has to put it out and let her position, her view, her opinion be known about the entire process that she's been subjected to, which she describes as unconstitutional. Look.
Yeah, but you see, the Constitution has insulated the judiciary, from the interferences of the executive. And when we say a court, it also includes, the justices. They have been insulated. Now, again, in an attempt to expose the weaknesses of the, justice delivery system, she has brought to the fore, what majority, of the general public have always been saying, that there's something fundamentally wrong, with the way we administer justice in this country. So she being, the topmost, administrator of justice, and, now feeling aggrieved for once, she feels it. She has felt it. She must now put herself, into the position of the ordinary Ghanaian litigant who accesses the justice delivery system in the court. That, who complains that, for a small error of picking, an item in a shop, can be incarcerated in the court for many years. And then when they complain, shut up. You are before a court. The judge has taken a bribe. Shut up. Judges don't take bribes. Judges, are they not human beings? And therefore, if a litigant feels that, the justice the case required, was not forthcoming, or she was denied that justice and has evidence that, a judge has taken, bribe, they should not, ask them to shut their mouth. Now she says that she doesn't, she hasn't taken a bribe. That is an admission that other judges, take bribe. And the litigating public know the judges who do take bribe. No human being ever, this is to, say that because I'm a human being, but I'm a judge. Therefore, there are some judges who are fine. They will never, and we know them. And there are other judges who will take, let us say it, and deal with the canker. It is not, when we say bribe, we always, look beyond our shoulder and say, it's the politician. Judges take bribe. Some judges take bribe. And if she is now saying, that she doesn't, but she's been given a raw deal, and the whole thing, the secrecy, as a cover-up, and what should the ordinary litigant say? Then the entire institution is a cover-up. So once she has made this, public confession, I am happy, I'm glad that it didn't come from Martin Pebu or Rep, but it came from the Chief Justice. It means the judiciary stinks. And that is how come she has felt the frustration of a stinking judiciary. Let us do something about it. At where I've reached now, if I see wrongdoing in the judiciary and, I don't say anything about it, I will be, in infraction of divine law, So if the Chief Justice herself has, confessed, made this acknowledgement, then on her own showing an admission, she has supervised a judicial system that can cover up the ills and weaknesses of the system, that can make people, that can frustrate litigants, that can even kill litigants. We only, use the word kill or murder when we say a doctor will be pioneer and the person, so medical negligence. If a judge takes, bribe, or a lawyer, and there are some lawyers who collect, bribes and give to judges. If these things are done, it is worse than a doctor who had negligently caused the death of a person. So you have a piece of land, and because of the weaknesses of the system, you lose your land. The judge knows that the person in whose favor judgment has been given is not the owner of the land, but the judge has taken money.
Yeah.
You see, you have thrown, the true and lawful owner into destitution, into abject, but people die because of deprivation of these things. So let us commend her leadership, get to talk on for her bold, decision to walk, into this public, even though it was, not right for her to do it, but the candor, the frankness, the sincerity with which she has admitted that, we have a very chilling judicial system. Let's, open it up and make everyone free. When we walk into the courtroom, you are going, is the seat of justice. Just, visit our court. As it's raining, you find mud. Just before you enter the venue for justice. You have to wade through mud. In the rural area, even Accra here, some courtrooms, when it rains, they cannot function. What is all that? People, some ministers are stealing money when our courtrooms, are not being resourced. Judges are not being paid well. And when they take it, we complain. But we must complain because they shouldn't do that. When they do that, they hurt, the people, who otherwise shouldn't have been cheated. So I'm happy. I'm happy for her that she has said it. Now, it's food for thought because the young ones who are doing the research must now, go out there and, find out, the cases in which, litigants have complained. And when you complain in the court, what happens? They say you are talking too much. Sometimes your lawyer will have to apologize. But she has said it. And she made it, unapologetically. And I agree with her.
I see. Matibe, we wanted to make a quick intervention, and Eduging Tamaklo has just stepped out in a bit. But just that quick position on the claim, in fact, the concern that she raised. Mr. Sassari has described this entire press conference as disrespectful, essentially. But then you referenced what she, in her view, should have been public, which was not, and reason why she came out to do this. And that she suspects an agenda underlying the entire process, even though it's Article 146 that is being. Could she have done anything different from what she did right now in, as it were, addressing the said agenda that she suspects is underlying this entire process, which is being clothed under Article 146?
Wow. Any other process apart from this? Well, so it would appear not many options. So meaning that this was more about coming out to face the case politically. Because earlier on I had mentioned that she's in court. Her documents, her processes are before the court, in the High Court. So meaning that from our understanding of contempt and what the Supreme Court held in the Justice Paul Berry versus Tiger PI, Attorney General, etc., she opened herself up for contempt of court, right? Because her processes are before the court. Her processes are before the court. Yes.
Martin, I don't think she waded into the High Court. She restricted herself to, the infractions going on before the committee.
And that's why she's put before the High Court.
Yeah.
Those are the very matters
Yes.
that her lawyer was not giving audience because she was not personally present. They're not getting copies of the prima facie ruling, petitions, etc. So she's before the High Court. The court will go into all those matters. So that's why I was saying that. So once there's an application for judicial review pending in the High Court, then it was difficult. Yes, if she had limited, so yes, there were parts of the press conference where she was referring to the Supreme Court rulings, those ones that have already been dismissed, you know, where she said that she had applied to the court so that she waived her right to be heard in camera, and so she wanted it to be broadcast live, everything, but the Supreme Court disagreed. Of course, you read the erudite ruling of Justice Amadou Tanko. Yeah, you know, Tanko would write with that flair.
Yeah.
Justice Amadou Tanko, you know. And then Justice A.J. Frimpong. Yeah, Kulendi also. Yes, so the court, you were very clear that, hey, this Article 146 Clause 8 is too clear. In-camera proceedings are in-camera proceedings. They don't want to, you know, do anything that would, you know. Even people had suggested that if any attempt was made to broadcast the proceedings, then it means that there was then be an opportunity for somebody to apply subsequently to nullify everything. You see, so this one is very clear to us that we are caught by the provisions that it should be done in secret. We are caught by the provision. So let's go on. So as senior counsel is mentioned, her coming out serves other purposes. So when the proceedings are done, we will then wade into that. But quite clearly, you see that, and I've even also mentioned it previously and briefly, that it's advocacy for law reform. Albeit at this time, it is not right. The timing is not right for the law reform here, because in the process, she had to deal with too many, divulge this and too many secrets. Yes, because senior, even apart from what she's put in the High Court, telling us what's happening in the proceedings, is also part of the Contemptuous Act. So even for those things that are not in her High Court application for judicial review, once she's telling us what's happening in there, based on the Justice Derry case, that's also within the province of contempt. And let's be careful. You see that the Supreme Court itself, in order to make sure that we don't have a discussion while the proceedings are ongoing, in the Justice Derry case, look, they did this fine distinction. They went back to the GBA case, the one Eduji referenced even a few weeks ago and today referenced. In the Justice Derry case, they went back to the GBA versus Attorney General case, right? And then that's 95 thereabout, the Urban case. They went in there and saw that what the Supreme Court was talking about in that particular case was a focus on only the committee proceedings, only. So meaning that in that GBA case, they didn't talk about if somebody leaked the petition before the committee, whether that would be a breach. They didn't deal with that. So the court in the Justice Derry case said, look, the GBA case was too restrictive. So they will not even follow it, because the GBA case did not address petitions that would be leaked. Because let's get this context. In the Justice Derry case, Justice Paul Derry went to court to say that the Chief Justice at the time had asked the Judicial Secretary to hold a press conference, okay, and a press statement, and to put out the names of justices who were going to be investigated for the Anas bribery scandal. Let's get that fact. That's what the Chief Justice at the time did, right? Justice Georgina Wood. She asked Judicial Secretary to put out a statement that the following justices, 12 of them, and then the district court magistrates, etc., are going to be investigated for the Anas bribery scandal. So Paul Derry said, no, I don't agree for putting my name out there and say I'll be investigated for the Anas bribery scandal. You've breached Article 146 Clause 8, that the thing should be in camera. So when the Supreme Court was going about ruling, they reviewed the previous decisions. And one of the foremost previous decisions was the GBA case.
I see.
When they went in, they saw that no, the GBA case is not useful to us because the GBA case did not discuss and did not make any decision on when the petition has been disclosed, when the petition has been published before the committee goes into the hearing. You see, so they said no, GBA did not discuss. GBA was just talking about the proceedings itself, that the proceedings itself should be in secret. But they didn't discuss that, what if somebody publishes it? So they said, look, they prefer Frankie J. Chum, that in Frankie J. Chum, the Supreme Court had held that don't disclose anything apart from just telling the media that I have presented a petition to the president. Don't say what it is about. So you see that they were faulting the Chief Justice publication that is a mass bribery scandal.
Yeah.
You see, so the Supreme Court itself was faulting a sitting Chief Justice in the Paul Derry case. They said, no, don't do that. Don't say this Anas bribery scandal. You've gone too far. And of course, Anas himself too, for publishing the whole petition that he presented to President Mahama, all that. So the court deprecated all of that and came to a conclusion that yes, notwithstanding the unconstitutionality of the publications, they couldn't stop the committee from doing its work. They couldn't stop the processes. Yes, because that's what Paul Derry wanted, Justice Paul Derry. He said, if you've published all these things, Anas has published, Anas has screened the video, all those things, then it's a breach of Article 146. So once a constitutional provision is being breached, the Supreme Court should stop everything, nullify the Anas petition to the president, nullify investigations. The Supreme Court said, no, yes, it is wrong, but we cannot grant you that remedy that because it's been published, we will stop everything. Rather, then that's when they developed the contempt remedy that, okay, it's up to the committee to take the matter to the High Court for contempt.
I see.
Right.
There's a question from Dr. Emmanuel Kwesi-Chum, who says, good morning. I want to find out what the former law school director meant by the Chief Justice has disrespected the president and the entire judicial system. If you feel some sense of unfairness in the process of removal or any judicial process against you as the Chief Justice, and especially when the case has already assumed a certain level in the court of public opinion, then what would he have done if he was in the shoes of the Chief Justice? That's the question to you. I don't know if you still maintain that position that he acted, that action is disrespectful. Let me acknowledge the president, Dr. Arthur Kennedy, is a former flag bearer hopeful of the MPP, and then also a medical director. He's joining us on Zoom right now. Dr. Arthur Kennedy, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Thank you. And I have...
greetings to your panel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Kwasi is giving you away, but you can't see. So, but then that's the question to you. Why you describe that
so, as you know, I attempted to explain, if she were in court, she will have to observe, the rules of procedure. So, in the court of public opinion, she, also has to respect, the rules, observe them. Now, the aspects, relating to whether, she will resign or she will resign, that doesn't arise at this stage. It doesn't arise at all, because all the authorities, including the J. Paul Derry, the Supreme Court made a pronouncement that once it is triggered, once Article 146 is triggered, the person who is being investigated has no option, other than to participate to completion.
Go through it to the end.
Yes, go through the process to completion. I find it too hard to appreciate, because the fundamental law of the land with respect to employment is that a contract of employment is not a contract of slavery. And therefore, since Nyako and Bank of Ghana was decided, it has been a fundamental principle that no employee should be, forced against his or her wishes to work for the employer, and likewise, an employer, cannot be forced, to keep or retain the services, of an employee in its employ. Here we are. The person is alleging violations bordering on infractions of the Constitution, the fundamental human rights. She's being psychologically persecuted. Her energy is being and yet she cannot. This is the stage where the president must trigger Article 146 Clause 11, which provides a measure, as it were, for the president to intervene. I mean, I can appreciate the sentiments of her leadership, get to talk on. She's saying it's too much for her. I believe that as a nation, we should rally behind, the president to say that it is not doing the nation any good, and therefore, please invoke Article 146.11 and leave the suspension, and then let her retire. I think it's a much more dignified exit, from this trauma, that is being unleashed, onto a very young Chief Justice. Now, if you are a judge, there are certain things you cannot do, and under the Constitution, even when she's given a dignified exit, except with the permission of the Speaker, she cannot do any job. You see, I believe Gertrude must be in the early 60s, 62 or 63, thereabout. What does she do with her life? So my appeal to the president is, as a listening father, and being a father of the nation for all of us, this is we have reached a stage where a father must intervene.
But that is if she herself as well is willing to do so.
No, she has no choice then.
Yeah. No. But if she's willing, because she's indicated in the press conference that much to her own, personal discomfort, she's had to marshal all the necessary defense to go through the process.
Because
that's her posture. That's her posture.
Yeah, but that is what Article 146
that she is willing to.
Yeah, but Article 146 says that she cannot resign. That's what 148 is saying, that it's in camera. So once it's in camera, and whether you go to the press or back and forth and all that, let us finish. That is why the Article 146.11 says it is only the president who may decide to lift the suspension, because he was the person who took the decision to suspend, and therefore he's the only person. I don't think that if the president says I'm lifting this, and that is why the Council of State is there, that is why the Judicial Council is there, let them dialogue and save us from this embarrassing drama that is unfolding, and our children and grandchildren are watching. It's not doing us any good, Internationally, our reputation as a nation is sinking, and we must do something to arrest it. So if I were the president, I will, use this press conference of my own Chief Justice. Mind you, she's our Chief Justice, only that, we are using the word, suspended, to describe her, until the report sustains the petition. She is the Chief Justice. If the petition fails, then she will be removed. And I'm suggesting that, given what she has told the nation, given her candor, given her forthrightness, her sincerity, her passion, even if in so doing, she shot herself wrongly in the foot, the president, should, take a line of least resistance, invoke article or rely on article 146.11, leave the suspension, and then, offer her a dignified exit, so that she takes an early retirement, voluntary retirement, pay her all that. She's done more than 10 years already, and therefore she qualifies to take, instead of, subjecting her, to the end and wallow, in sadness. People, if she's, on the street, people will be pointing, to the, there goes the Chief Justice. She, when some smile, they will interpret it one way. Even if she's, laughing, they will say that. All that, I mean, it's not good, for us as a nation. I think we should save the situation.
Of course, I'm going to come to you, but Dr. Arthur Kennedy, on this part, because her leadership took on outlined 4 reasons why she addressed the press about the removal process being historic, far-reaching implications of the process beyond her, the alleged constitutional violations and illegality of the proceeding, and the calls for her resignation, which he says, and that's what Kwaka Ansasari spent some time addressing. He had earlier held the view that this entire press conference, in his view, was not needed. He said it was disrespectful to the president because the process is in motion. But she was also of the view that this entire process is unconstitutional. It flies in the face of anything that the law prescribes when it comes to the delivery of justice. And so she had to let the public know what was going on. Has this press conference done any good?
No, it hasn't. If I was advising her, I would have advised against the press conference.
Why?
People who seek equity must come with clean hands. The Chief Justice herself has superintended the application of 146 in other situations and didn't seem to find anything wrong with it. So I think that this whole evolution of a case has been undignified. I wouldn't go as far as to say that she disrespected the president, but as a non-lawyer, I know that if you think something is being done to you and it's unconstitutional, you don't fight it in public opinion, you go to court. And I shouldn't be telling the Chief Justice that. But think for a moment, if while all this was going on, she had not been suspended and she was still picking Supreme Court panels, the people who think we are being embarrassed, the embarrassment will be even far worse. She as the defendant will get her lawyers to file something. Then as Chief Justice, she will empanel those who will sit on it. And I just think this whole spectacle has not done her or all of us any good. And some of her reasons have been a little difficult to follow about, her husband not being there and all. I just think this press conference and her antics have not really rebounded to her reputation. As for what she can do, I mean, she's risen to chief that she can teach the law, she can write books, she can inspire young women like Ms. Governor about walking the narrow and the upright. So I wouldn't worry about how the Chief Justice will do. I think she will do very well. But I would admit that she raises important points about this whole process because I don't know whether when the Constitution says a process, something must happen in camera, one person can appeal and override the constitutional provision that it should be in camera. But maybe all these are things that the Constitutional Review Committee and the leadership of my Vanda mate H. Kwesi Prempe will look at so that we can all be guided by the lessons that we can harvest from this. I wish the Chief Justice well. but I think she has not been served well by her attorneys and by those who are advising her.
Why do you hold that view?
I think some of the motions that she has filed had given the impression that maybe her attorneys had not been well grounded in Supreme Court precedents and others, and that is difficult to believe. And I also think that maybe the temperament of former Attorney General Dami and others sometimes have not been beneficial to her. So I think that part of it is her concern, part of it is also the general advice about how she has related to the press, even putting aside the decision to hold a press conference. I don't know that her tone and her tenor and the topics she chose were the best. And I think that the sooner this thing is over, the better it will be for the whole country.
I see. But in effect, there's also one point that Sansasari made about how all of this also brings to the fore matters about the entire judicial system in itself that has to be addressed. Lamatik Bebo says this press conference has gone, in fact, he's opened up too many boundaries or broken too many boundaries and opened up the Pandora's box for us to hear and see some of the things. There is some good to it, is it not?
Well, there is, to the extent that it holds a mirror to the face of the judiciary. But you know, a lot of this started from somewhere. Remember when the Supreme Court was flexing its muscles and Kandapa was talking about one side winning too much, and President Mahama was talking about the fact that they don't trust the judiciary. All this should have been warnings that should have been heeded. I think that our judiciary is being politicized maybe beyond redemption, and we know that this has happened in our history before, all the way from Nkrumah to Rawlings, and sometimes with tragic consequences. So I just think that her tenure as Chief Justice has not been measured and wise and independent. I think it is not about the knowledge of the law, but about appropriateness and decorum and demeanor and traditions. And I think that, unfortunately, the court has been too willing to wade into matters that maybe did not belong in the province of the courts. I was stunned that the parliament will pass a law and somebody can go to the court and file something and then will say, oh, don't even transmit the thing to the president to sign. I mean, these are basics that do not benefit the courts. And the Chief Justice here, Justice Roberts, have had occasion to admonish some judges and others about bringing the court sometimes unreasonably into politics, because when that happens, it does not benefit the whole system. So I think there is background, and of course you add in the fact that President Mahama just nominated a bunch of new Supreme Court justices, and you wonder whether this is the best time for something like that to happen. So our judiciary, just the same way that our democracy is in crisis, our judiciary is facing its own crisis, and I hope good legal minds would sit down and look at how we can reform it, because as much as we are disgusted by what the public knows, if you listen to attorneys and former judges who know a lot about the workings of the judiciary, it is not encouraging. Lack of amity and comity among Supreme Court justices, not being disrespected, people being removed from panels and put on panels in an arbitrary way. If you notice, when Justice Apalu went to court about Liman nominating him inappropriately, his colleagues were very happy to, in effect, rescue him. It is strange that looking at what the current Chief Justice is doing. She doesn't even trust her own colleagues back on the court she used to lead to, in effect, come to her defense or see her arguments. And that itself is telling.
See, now there are quite a number of messages, and I'll come to that, and then also take lawyer questions. Quick bite on this. This one here from Mansa Musa is watching us from on the Voice of London television in the heart of the city of London. Says, good morning. I'm watching you and getting more worried by the minute. Where from this father proposal within formal and official operations of state, this talk must stop. In advising the president to apply his vested authority, that power authority he wields shouldn't come in personal or informal consideration. The father attributes must be discouraged. President Mahama is a father to his children. He's not the father of Ghanaians. We must learn and start to undo personal matters in official dealings. Thanks and good morning. I think that's just in response to something you said earlier. Lawyer Kakre Samoa says, good morning. Unfortunately, I don't share the views expressed by the Supreme Court that once you are under inquiry, you cannot resign. I'm afraid that means that a court or disciplinary process puts one in a position of a slave without rights. Once you decide on your own volition to resign from public office, whatever the circumstance, I think that no court has the power to stop you from exercising that right. After all, even when being tried for a capital offense, you can change your plea to guilty before judgment. We should not trick ourselves into believing that law and the courts have power to dehumanize us. We created them. They are not above us. Good morning, sir. Good morning to you too. As well, but she's indicated quite clearly that this matter of resignation is not on the table, and she cites the reasons why. You disagree. This one here says, what will happen if the suspension is lifted, but she refuses to resign? Can the president lift the suspension and retire her? Early retirement. Most of our laws, too, have lost their usefulness. We should reform the whole judiciary, and some of our not fit for purpose laws. Thank you very much for your message this morning. And then this one here from Professor Stephen Kweku Asare. Good morning, and thank you very much for the message that you sent to us. And he says the grounds for her removal already suggest a pattern of acting ultra-vires the Constitution. Yet she compounds the charge by willfully violating the Constitution through this public spectacle, despite its clear command that such proceedings be held in camera. This conduct lays bare her state of mind. Either she believes the Constitution does not bind her, or she does not understand it at all, you say. And thank you very much for your message, Professor Stephen Kweku Asare. And quite a number of you. This one here says that I'm not a lawyer, but can both lawyers in the studio then file at the High Court for contempt, just like Vincent Assefuwa did, in order to test the law, if indeed Lawyer Martin Kpebu is of the view that this press conference slips into the arena of contempt? Can somebody test the law on that matter? That is what one of our viewers, KK, is sending us a message in that regard. No, there's a quick one if you have to respond to
so
quickly.
It says it's PK.
Yes, KK.
KK, we've already said that it's for the committee. Here, the Supreme Court said it's the committee. When it comes to contempt, generally, right? Yes, any other person can. But to the extent that here, the Supreme, that's when I say here, in the Justice Paul Derry case versus Chief Justice, Tiger PI, Chief Justice and the Attorney General, the Supreme Court said the committee. So, I don't know, maybe future cases will determine whether, apart from the committee, any individual too can apply for contempt. But for now, what they said here is that the committee may refer it. So this may be an exception to contempt generally. Yes.
I see. You wanted to make a point very quickly. Yes.
Now, on this particular issue, I wish to repeat and make this emphatic point that much as we are dwelling on armed forces, it gives us also the opportunity. It gives us also the opportunity to use this as a platform to educate ourselves foremost here, and then also to educate the general public, and more so when you have legal brains and panel. If you critically analyze today's discussion, you come to the realization that all discussants went this way and came the other way. We are in support of the CJ in one breath, and then we are also against the CJ on the other. It gives us also the opportunity for us to analyze some of the legal issues and then to propose for key amendment in our constitution moving forward. That is why I took the opportunity, and I was of the view that I was wading into that until you brought me back into 146, and I had to mention the aspect that Article 19 gives the CJ all the clothing, the legal clothing, for her to also defend herself. Just that the procedure she used was wrong. Now, the point I wanted to make was that if we restrict ourselves to only the circumstance and what is happening now, we may also be doing a serious disservice to the country. That is why I had to go back and then relate it to 1803 case of US, when they were also confronted with a similar situation, two regimes. And then they had to balance the issues, said that the governance system wouldn't also collapse along the line. Now, Ocansey, when we ask this question as lawyers, or when we go to court, the issues before us, okay, we identify what the issues are, and then we try to address them. Now, if one asks this question, this fundamental question, what has the CJ done? Critically, if you look at it, nobody is even answering that question. We refer to it as petition. But the content of it, we refuse to discuss it. That is why I am of the view that if we really want to go about the content, one may conclude that the CJ has not done anything. Do you get it? But that will also be worrying. That will also be worrying. That is why I am saying that there are some antecedents, some issues that are accumulated and occasion this. My senior mentioned the aspect that her appointment even was also an issue. Okay? The analysis I did, when I backtrack, I noticed that this politicization is just a recent thing, occurrence. And it started from only 2012, when we had the 2013 electoral petition, whereupon the panelists, okay, that had the case. If you recall, the Chief Justice at the time, to me, did the right thing. That was Madame Georgina Wood. She said, in the same American situation, she said, even though I'm the Chief Justice, on this particular matter, I'll recuse myself. I'll refuse to sit on it. Because I am in the regime. Some people are linking me to, is it Nana Akufo-Addo?
Yeah.
Others are also seeing me as being a church member to President Mahama. The same issue as the American issue. So she said, okay, for me not to be entangled in this web, let me not use my position even as a Chief Justice, and then allow the next senior most person there, which happened to be Justice Atuguba. Now, in the aftermath, okay, or during, before, during, and then after that election, that is where perception started coming up that some judges are aligning themselves to the ruling party, others are also aligning themselves to the opposition. So when the others had the opportunity, they were also like, okay, then I'll also toe in this direction. Then your opponent will also have to advise themselves. And then on, when there was a change in government, they realized that Nana Akufo-Addo had also gone on to appoint some other judges. So already in the build-up to the election, President Mahama at the time in opposition had to even raise the concern that no, seemingly, okay, is becoming of a trend. So this is what we might also look into when the opportunity comes our way. That is why I am of the view that critically, if we want to go into this particular matter, we may, at the end of the day, not necessarily find issues. For instance, I on other platforms, I was saying that if it were to be the case that the Chief Justice had embezzled some funds belonging to the state, or she had engaged in some corrupt practices, example, going to take bribe to decide a case either for or against another party, I'm sure the whole country, everybody will be up on her to be kicked out the next day. But the petitions as we have now, if you look at the weight.
Well, that, you see, and that's why I would stop you in your track, because we are all restricting ourselves in going into the merits of it, because as to whether it is weighty or otherwise, it is not for us here to decide. Exactly. So I don't want us to sway into the realms of contempt. And when it happens that way, we all have our own issues to deal with. So thank you, like I said. But this leads us to our next issue. In fact, it's exactly 30 minutes top of the hour. Within this week, a number of things happened with the new Patriotic Party. They have pulled the brakes and asked that all persons who have declared their intentions to contest the flag bearership of the party should cease any meetings with any interest groups or whatsoever, because they're going to meet them on the 3rd of July. All of this is as a result of the decision by the National Executive Committee to put up the idea of electing the flag bearer on the 31st of January 2026. There are people who hold strong views about that. Dr. Arthur Kennedy is going to have a stake extensively on this matter. But within the week as well, the party launched an institute that would teach their members their ideology of the party. And the former president, John Ejekum Kufuor, was the keynote speaker there. And he had some profound words to say. Take a look at this, portions of it. I'm going to go for this quick break. Take a look.
To delude ourselves, we must ask, how come a party with the philosophy and vision for humanity, that's our main strength, humanity, of our tradition, how come we have been reduced to the current situation, a situation we all regret or must regret? How come? This thing didn't happen just like that. If we take care to look at the electoral history from 2016, 2020, 2024, and if we are sincere with ourselves, we would know that the electorate of Ghana has...
That's the former president, John Ejekum Kufuor, there. We're going to go for this quick break. When we are back, Dr. Arthur Kennedy is still on Zoom with us, and then also Sukweku Ansasari. This is Key Point, and as always, my outfit is by Kogra Clothing. It's the best version of you. Locate them on the Spintex Road, 18 Junction, for this outfit and many others that you see me wear on Key Point. Call them on this number, 0244-238-341. 0244-238-341. Choose Kogra Clothing. Choose right. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us.
Every dream starts with a prayer, and every prayer ends with a promise. At Blue Financial Services, it is our passion to make you smile, to show you that your smallest deposits can lead to major financial wealth. From the early days, taking that first big step to the days of joyous maturity, we will be with you, so that when it is time to dream again and you're ready to invest your hopes and dreams into the future, we will still be here with you. So dream again and trust in Blue Financial Services. Visit our branch today for a better future tomorrow and trust in Blue Financial Services.
Introducing Coa Mixture, Coa Plus Mixture, and Coa MT Mixture, brought to you by Coa Research and Manufacturing Limited Company, proudly made in Ghana. Formulated to support your general well-being. For those seeking immune system support, there is Coa Plus Mixture. Support your body's defenses and stay strong. When it comes to combating malaria, Coa MT Mixture will aid your treatments. For effective relief from malaria symptoms, try Coa MT Mixture. Coa Mixture, Coa Plus Mixture, and Coa MT Mixture are not recommended for pregnant women, lactating mothers, and children under 12 years. Always take a malaria test before using Coa MT Mixture. Choose Coa Mixture, Coa Plus Mixture, and Coa MT Mixture for your health needs. Available now at pharmacies nationwide. For bulk purchases, contact 0244 726611 or 0591 565 778. This advert is FDA approved.
To get polytan.
Oh, and you're a fine.
Go straight.
No, I want to left, right.
That's right. Ghana na ye wono. So when you do more, and ye data. Oh no! Abe, na here. Me pe polytan kato. Enu tin ta menu aba otu ko bia be na ba heju. O food to bia, e de enjoy ye kura.
Akuya bulambu kotoman. Emu ha.
Like they took my eyes. Go to the distributor and you give the original polytank. Polytank. You hear the sound?
Polytank. Papananka Sankasa.
Welcome to Rehoboth Palm, Ayumensa Gated Community. Nestled between the vibrant city of Accra and the breathtaking Ebri Mountains lies a serene gated community. Here, you'll find litigation-free, fully serviced demarcated plots to build your dream house in a gated community surrounded by lush greenery and the calming beauty of nature.
do not want us to delude ourselves. We must ask, how come a party with the philosophy and vision for humanity, that's our main strength, humanity, of our tradition, how come we have been reduced to the current situation? A situation we all regret or must regret. How come? This thing didn't happen just like that. If we take care to look at the electoral history from 2016, 2020, 2024, and if we are sincere with ourselves, we would know that the electorate of Ghana has matured. Nobody can deceive it. I assure you, I believe this electorate, the Ghanaian electorate, I'm not talking of party electorate, has not rejected the value systems of our tradition. Who doesn't want respect for human rights? Who wouldn't want an economy that is generating wealth to benefit the entire population inclusively? Who would not support equality of opportunity for all the children of Ghana? All the children, from kindergarten through junior high, senior high to the universities.
As the former president, John Ejekum Kufuor there. Dr. Kennedy, are these sentiments you share, hearing the former president talk about the party you belong to?
Yes, there are sentiments I share, and his question is a good one. How come, Mr. President, is that we ruled corruptly? We had a government that was too big, we were arrogant, we showed impunity, we were
Hello, Doc. I'm losing you briefly. If you could reposition for me. Yeah, I was losing you in a bit. We'll try to rectify the connection. Dr. Kennedy, can you hear me? Okay. Now, sorry, you heard the concerns, that the former president raises, asking questions about how come the party is where it is now. You're a member of the MPP, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Are these sentiments you share?
Sure. And I'm happy, you started by reminding usefully, the attendees of the MPP tradition. The MPP tradition. What is the MPP tradition? Development in freedom, respect for rule of law, oneness, cohesion. Today, the regrettable spectacle of the MPP is one of dismemberment. The MPP is now, fractured, and it has, all of a sudden, turned into a party, of lawlessness. A party where there's no longer respect for the rule of law, and the MPP tradition is anchored on leadership. The leader of the MPP is the chairman, not the president. The chairman of the MPP is also the leader. So if you like Baumia, Dr. Baumia, has lost an election, he no longer remains at the number one spot. No, he has to go back and be the last in the queue. That is the MPP tradition. So I remember when, after the 92 MPP election, the general election, that same year, Edubuahin lost and wanted in 1996, to lead the party again. He was reminded. He was reminded by, the then chairman, B.J. Darocha, that you can't do that. You went, you lost, so you go back. Now, D-line, so no one will be taken out of 10. The regret of the MPP today is that they have no leader.
The MPP has no leader.
They have no leader.
The party has a chairman.
It has a chairman, who now claims, to be indisposed. And he's not been effective, as it were. The likes of Darocha, Peter Lajete, Odoye Sykes, Harun Eseku, those, with authoritative voices, who could stamp the authority, on activities of the MPP. We no longer have, any such persons leading the party, and therefore everyone in the MPP today is a leader. Everyone wants to be a chairman, general secretary at the same time, presidential, candidate. I'm glad that when Atta Kennedy, desired, to throw in his lot, with the other, he will recall, with nostalgia, what, were, the rules. Today, all the rules have been sacrificed. And unless and until, there's a return, to the good old days, when, there was a clear-cut leadership, and people knew what they were reasonably expected to do, the MPP, will continue, to sink into the, abyss. And, one day, there will be no MPP.
And those were the same words of the former president, John Kufuor, on that platform. And Dr. Kennedy, I asked you that question about whether you share in those sentiments. And when you started answering, I lost you briefly. You say these are sentiments, the former President Kufuor's sentiments are what reflects your concerns about what the party is or where the party is at this time?
Yeah, they do. And actually, he's right. But the answers are, of course, in plain view. That we governed recklessly and corruptly. We were incompetent. There was impunity. And when the government started going off the rails, there were too many people blinded by power. So people decided to look the other way. And the electorate delivered the verdict because they were unhappy. And it is actually something we should commend them for. And our reforms should aim at bringing back home the Mahama voters. 20% of Mahama's voters were MPP members who went to the polling booths and voted for him. Some couldn't bring themselves to vote for him, so they stayed at home. All those people must come back. And we are not entitled to their votes. We need to get them with good policies and good ideas. And Mr. President Kufuor, I have heard through the grapevine that your advice was that the party, particularly the former president, must apologize to Ghanaians for our bad governance. I said that in total.
You've heard from the grapevine that the former president, John Kufuor, recommended that Nana Akufo-Addo should apologize to the nation.
Yes.
For what?
And I think it is a very good idea. We the last 8 years, we failed Ghanaians, and we failed our tradition, and we failed our history. The MPP is a better party than the party and government we saw in the last 8 years.
I see, but the party is seeking to, as it were, do things differently by going, in fact, moving ahead of its enshrined constitutional provision to elect the party's flag bearer on the 31st of January, which is almost 3 clear years before the election in December 2028. The reasoning is that those who agree with that position say, I mean, it's the best thing to do. You are in a party in opposition. There are a lot of cracks, and as we're seeing now, as you have just alluded to, this is not the party that you know, a lot has gone wrong. So elect the flag bearer, get that out of the way, and then you can have time and deal with all the other issues and have a formidable front into going to 2028. Does that find favor with you?
It doesn't. That is pure bull.
It's pure what?
The leader, pure bull, B-U-L-L.
Okay.
The people who are making that argument are running from their shadows. What the party needs is accountability and renewal. We need to renew ourselves all the way from the polling stations up to the presidential candidacy. We need to look at why we lost, just like the former president started alluding to, and we need to face the facts. And we need renewal of leadership, and we need to deepen our democracy and demonetize our primaries. A primary system in which people can buy votes is disconnecting us from our grassroots. That is why people are voting for the NDC candidate and others are staying home. And what we are trying to do won't solve it. The first step, you alluded to the fact that the party does not have leadership. It doesn't. And the best way to get leadership is to go back to its voters, so that all the way down from the polling station to national chairman, we elect new leaders who will build the party and then move on to elect a presidential candidate. I think sometimes the national leaders, constituency chairpersons and national executives might even be more important than the presidential candidate, because they are foundational. Those are the people who would help us get a parliamentary majority. And a president should get to Jubilee House with a majority. Part of why we had problems is that the MPP lost its parliamentary majority in 2020. So in the last term, even if it had good ideas, they were difficult to implement. I think that the lesson from that is not to have less democracy, it is to have more democracy. And I think we should let all party members vote in our primaries.
And that's a consideration you want them to put, because there's going to be a delegates congress sometime next month, and you want that reform to be considered, that the election of the flag bearer will not be limited to delegates alone, but all the registered thousands or maybe millions of members of the MPP?
I didn't hear your last question well.
I was saying that, is it a reform that you want considered, in that the mode of the election of the flag bearer should not be limited to delegates so selected, but it should now be expanded to encompass all registered members of the MPP?
That is correct.
What would that achieve, essentially?
And I think that how that can be achieved is we can actually borrow from the American and Canadian, and to some extent the British primary system. In the US here, if you register as a voter and you declare support or sympathy or whatever for a party, you are entitled to vote in its primaries. So if you bring that to the Ghanaian situation, it means that if, for example, we go to the Electoral Commission database, which is the most reliable database we have, we can ask all Ghanaians who are registered voters to tell us which party they have allegiance to or support for, say, within a month. And then in future registers, we should ask that even at the beginning. Once we have that, I think we should let all those members who indicate allegiance to the MPP vote in the MPP parliamentary and presidential primaries. The same should apply to the NDC. It will mean, for example, that if you look at our MPP presidential primaries, Bantuma and Wale will vote in numbers that reflect their strength on the ground. And more to the point, that would demonetize the politics, because you can't bribe everybody in Bantuma and Wale. And not only that, it will also end this fast that when we are going to pick our presidential candidate, both Wale and Bantuma will have the same number of delegates. Or if you flip it, if we are going to pick the NDC candidate, then let's say Bantuma and Who Central will have the same number of delegates. It does not reflect the party's strength on the ground.
I see. But then there are those who favor this position about what the party intends to do in getting the flag bearership away, so that you can then have time to focus on these other matters, because they say that for as long as a flag bearer has not been elected, the effort to unite the ranks of the party will be difficult. You had earlier indicated that these people pushing this idea might have their hearts at the right place, but their brains at the wrong place. Why?
Hello?
Yes. Doc, can you hear me? The internet not too good, but yes.
I'm inclining to agreeing with him. You see, fortunately, I was the Roches, quote and unquote, boy in the party. And together, with Nanado, Dr. Wayo Seini, Amaku Tufo, Dr. Nyaho Tamaklu, Nanakwe, Kakra Samoa, who were the youngsters.
Each of the Kakra Samoas.
Yes, Kakra Samoa NDC. You see, and Kakra Samoa was, the one person. Dubois, Darocha, and others were always sending to Kumasi whenever they needed, Akatachi, Kwame Donko Fojo, to do something. And about 99% of the people who are the helm of, present the MPP were not members of the MPP when MPP was established. So they know next to nothing about the traditions of the party. That's why, I said. At Kennedy, at least, tried, to throw in, his fortune at one time or the other, and he actually met the MPP tradition at work. Now, what has happened to the MPP is that a few people, led by the former president Nanado, dismembered, the front of the party, massaged the party's constitution, and I must say that the constitution was written by the original constitution. Was written based upon the research that Nanado, Wayoseni, Amaku Tufo, and Ata Kennedy, then much younger, their contributions and all that. Somewhere along the lines, Nanado, took hold of the constitution, got a few friends, tore it into shreds. He wrote, a new constitution for the party. That is not helping, because he became the father figure of those who. Then these things cannot be said publicly. People are not saying it, and that is what Ata Kennedy meant by the monetization. That has taken control of the MPP. So if Kufuor, former President Kufuor, reminds them to go back, to the tradition in which all of us were born. Kufuor was addressing a constituency, that knew next to nothing about the tradition of the party. Now, if you assemble people like Ata Kennedy and those youngsters who wanted, then young as they were, to also be amongst the frontliners, then you are, getting somewhere. But when you address people, who share no, nostalgic, feelings regarding tradition and this thing, is like.
Richard, I think that's who says romancing a stone. I think that's Professor Ramsor Jampo, right? Indeed. Well, gentlemen, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Dr. Ata Kennedy, a one-time flag bearer hopeful of the NPP. There was a little disconnection with his Zoom, but I think he made his point quite forcefully and clearly. And also a medical practitioner. Kweku Ansansari is a former director of the Ghana School of Law. Said, I really do appreciate you coming. Thank you. I hope that you make some time and join us again when you have the time. Also, lawyer Kwame Kwasin is a private legal practitioner, obviously, and also a lecturer. Thank you so much, Lawyer Martin Lutakpebu. I thank you so much, as always, for making that time to be here. I do appreciate your presence.
He's a one man.
And Godwin Judith Tamakulu as well. Alfred Ocansey, have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.